Hey guys, here we are at first part of the story. Where starts right after the Sasuke retrieval, Jiraiya takes Naruto on a 3-year training trip. Taking his training seriously, Naruto strives to become the best he can and learn everything that Konoha denied him. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe button. Now, let's jump right in. Gaara stood near the northwestern coast of the Land of Lightning, which was where they had predicted the White Zetsu army would come from. They couldn't go through the Land of Iron because it was heavily guarded by that nation's samurai. Because they were on the peninsula of the Land of Iron, it meant they would have to travel by sea, and since Kumagakure had been annihilated, it was the safest route for them to take. Commander Gaara. A shinobi called out to him. He was standing near the chakra transmission communication device. Another shinobi was attached to the device, his face hidden by a helmet. Gaara walked over to them. "What is it?" "The 1st and 2nd divisions have engaged the enemy," the shinobi reported. "What is the size of the enemy force?" "Smaller than we expected," the shinobi said. "Reports indicate that only a small force of about 20,000 is attacking our forces." Feeling the frown on his face, Gaara contemplated this baffling information. 20,000 troops wasn't large, especially when compared to the 100,000 that they had estimated the enemy to possess. That amount also wouldn't be sufficient to contend with the 40,000 that had been dispatched to deal with them. A feint? This could be a feint, but if that was the case, then where would the real attack come from? There were 3 possibilities, provided this was, indeed, a feint. They could attack somewhere else, they could launch a surprise attack, or this could be a feint to lure the 1st and 2nd divisions into a false sense of security and overwhelm them when they grew overconfident. Mei is currently guarding all of the feudal lords with a contingent of elite ninja. "We have 2 divisions available for backup, including my own 4th division. I think we'll be fine for now. Have our forces keep an eye out for anything unusual," Gaara commanded. "Report to me the moment something happens that's outside of our predictions." With Shikamaru in charge of planning out their engagement, they had created numerous predictions on how this battle would go. Since it was such a large-scale conflict, even Shikamaru, whose genius was known to everyone, couldn't predict everything, especially since they had so little information on their enemy's true battle strength. However, Shikamaru had predicted that something would happen that was outside of their current ability to deal with. Once they found it, they could inform Shikamaru, who would create a counter-strategy. From where he stood, Gaara could not see the conflicts currently taking place. As the supreme leader of the allied shinobi forces, his biggest role was to lead the entire army, not just his own 4th division. It galled him to be left waiting on the sidelines, but there was little he could do. Gaara had learned from being Kage. Sometimes the most important role a person could take wasn't on the front lines, but in the back supporting his people. He still wished he could fight alongside his companions. "Supreme Commander." The shinobi wearing the helmet attached to the communication device shouted suddenly. "A new report just came in. Our forces on the beach are being attacked by Deidara, Hisashi Hyuga, Dankato, Kakazu, and the Gold and Silver brothers, Ginkaku and Kinkaku." "What?" Gaara couldn't contain his shock. He didn't know many of those shinobi, but he knew at least one of them. However, Deidara, the one who had tried to kidnap him, was dead. "Our forces in the Land of Hot Water have reported that they're currently engaged in battle with the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist." The shinobi shouted again. Gaara bit his lip. The 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. Even he knew of them. They were the strongest, most elite force to have come from Kirigakure. However, it was inconceivable that they were fighting his forces. The only current member of the 7 Swordsmen alive today was Chojuro. "Update from the 5th Division." The shinobi shouted again. "We have engaged the enemy. Forces consist of Hanzo, Kimimaro, Chakachi, and Iwase." It bothered Gaara that he could become even more shocked. Kimimaro? Gaara had fought and defeated Kimimaro when he was still a Genin. He remembered that battle, in which he had rescued Rock Lee. Kimimaro had died after succumbing to an illness during their fight. He shouldn't even be alive, much less fighting. What is going on here? Gaara asked himself. Unfortunately, he wouldn't receive an answer. Zux. Naruto stood on the bridge of the Zeppelin along with his team. They were above Mountain's graveyard, circling around it. From the glass window, he could see the ground below, a thick forest with numerous giant bones jutting up from the vast floral region like stakes. Even from this distance, he could make out several giant bones that looked like rib cages. There were also a lot of mountains in this area. One of these mountains was no doubt where Akatsuki had stationed their base. Captain Naruto, the pilot, a young woman, called out to him. The air currents have stabilized. You and your team are free to begin the operation. Thank you. Naruto turned to the other 7, Neji, Konan, Yugao, Tenten, Rock Lee, Sakura, and Kakashi. You heard the lady. Let's suit up and get out of here. You seem awfully excited, Sakura commented as they all left the bridge and headed for the emergency exit. Of course, Naruto responded, leading the others down the hallway. The bridge was on the bottom floor, so they didn't need to take any stairs. I've discovered a love for hang gliding. After we finish kicking ass, I think I'll go somewhere with the girls, and we'll try this out for fun. Sakura wrinkled her nose at his mention of the girls. She didn't approve of polygamy. Fortunately, what she thought didn't really matter, and Yugao, who happened to be one of those girls, smiled as she walked beside him. I think that's a good idea, she said. Koyuki will love it. She'd definitely love it, Konan added. She's almost as daring as you are. Naruto grinned. That's Koyuki for you. Is it just me, Tenten began, or has Naruto become a major player? It's not just you, Neji said with a straight face. Yosh. Naruto-kun's flames of youth have exploded. Rock Lee shouted. Kakashi just giggled perversely. The emergency exit hatch was located in the back of the Zeppelin, in a large room that had bolted down benches on either side. The room was a lot longer than it was wide. With their heavy footfalls echoed against the wooden floor, Naruto and the other 7 walked up to their hang gliders, which hung from racks on the ceiling. Naruto pulled his hang glider down and hooked himself up to it. He didn't know if these could be called hang gliders. They weren't like the ones traditionally used by most people. The Land of Spring hang glider was basically just a backpack that they strapped to their backs. By pressing a button attached to the chest strap, a pair of wings shot from the backpack. They just called it a hang glider because they couldn't think of anything better to call it. Pressing a large button next to the emergency hatch, Naruto took a step back as a loud, shrill, whistling reached his ears. The fierce howling of wind echoed throughout the room. A slight pressure was pulling on him, but he held firm and looked at everyone. Are you all ready? He asked. Everyone except Tenten gave him a loud, yes. Is it too late for me to turn back? She asked. Yes, Naruto said. Tenten's shoulders slumped. Figures. Since Naruto was in charge, he led the way out, leaping from the exit hatch and activating his wings. The air whistled around him. His hair was whipped about. The air was cool from this high up, and it stung his eyes enough that they began to water. Behind him, one by one, the other 7 members of his team leapt out of the hatch and extended their wings. They all formed up behind him in an arrow formation. Except for Tenten, who was wobbling all over the place. Naruto sighed and, channeling wind chakra, he forcibly nudged her into the right path, 2 meters to the left of and slightly behind Rock Lee. While soaring through the air, Naruto looked at the ground below, searching for the best spot for them to land. Since the forest was so dense, there were few places they could reach without crashing into the trees. The most ideal location would be near one of the large bones. The greenery looked less dense there. They could also land near a mountain, but since he didn't know which mountain Akatsuki was located in, he didn't think that would be a good idea. Hand gesturing, Naruto directed his 2 teams to follow him, and then soared down toward the largest set of bones in the area. It was the giant ribcage that he'd seen from afar. There was a small patch of forestless land next to it. While this could mean that it had been purposely left there by Akatsuki, and therefore they might be walking into a trap, it was also the only place they could reasonably land without getting stuck in a tree. As the squadron of ninja descended, Tenten pulled out one of her scrolls and activated it. Her hands shook. Naruto kept her steady using wind chakra as several hundred tri-pronged kunai shot from within the scroll and disappeared into the dense foliage. The goal in launching his kunai everywhere was to give them a means of moving through the area at a quick speed. If they ran into trouble, Naruto could just use Hiraishin to get them out of trouble by randomly traveling to one of the kunai. It wasn't long before the ground became much closer. Naruto circled the patch of clear ground several times, checking to see if there were any traps lying in store. He couldn't see anything. He also couldn't sense any chakra emission or killing intent. That didn't mean much. However, it wasn't like they could just stay in the air either. He made another gesture with his hand, directing everyone to follow him as he oriented himself toward the ground and descended faster than before. He soared past one of the large ribs. Having never seen anything like it, Naruto wondered what sort of creature it was from. Then he was moving past it, getting closer to the ground. 5 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter. Naruto's feet struck solid ground. He reinforced himself with chakra, skidding along the ground as he slowed down. The other 7 followed him. Yugao and Konan landed first, followed by Rock Lee and Neji, and then Tenten and Kakashi, with Sakura coming down last. Naruto took a moment to confirm that everyone was okay before nodding to himself. "Alright. Let's get started," he said. "Kakashi, Neji, Sakura, go set up perimeter seals around this area. Konan and Yugao, I want you to climb up one of these bones and be our eyes in the sky. Tenten and Rock Lee, stick with me." "Yosh!" Rock Lee shouted with a salute. "I'll stick around so long as you don't make me fly again," Tenten said. Naruto smiled. No promises. Since he'd given everyone their duties, Naruto started his own task. He made his infamous cross-hand seal and created a dozen clones, which quickly scattered. Then he waited for 60 seconds before created another dozen. He did this several times, spacing out each batch by 60 seconds. After he was done, he sat down and waited. With luck, it wouldn't be long before one of his clones found Akatsuki's hidden base. Zux. The battle had begun. He didn't know how it was going, since he had yet to join the battle, but it didn't matter. This was the preliminary engagement. So long as his forces didn't lose too much, even defeat was acceptable. All his forces needed to do right now was weaken the allied Shinobi Nation's army so he could use his trump card. Besides, my prey is already coming here. Victory would not be determined by which army won, but by whether or not Madara acquired the remaining Jinchuriki. Nothing mattered except for that. Madara stood in the epicenter of his base. Situated in the center of the room was a massive tree, which was further surrounded by large walls that connected it to the floor above. It was from this tree that the white Zetsus were being born. The process was still slow. He was using old Hashirama cells to create the white Zetsus. It was thanks to this tree that he had been able to build his army of 100,000 strong within the last several decades. He was not alone. A girl stood next to him, her red hair vibrant and marking her as a member of the Uzumaki clan. Both of her eyes looked different. One was red with multiple tomos. The other was purple and had rings in it. "Toby," a voice said from behind him. Madara grimaced as he turned around. The person standing before him had pale skin that was mostly hidden by a large black cloak. What little he could see of the man's skin was not just chalk white, it was covered in scales. Reptilian. Like a snake. Vibrant yellow snake eyes stared at him from within the hood and a wide smile was stretched across the man's face. "Kabuto, how are things proceeding?" He did not trust Kabuto, but so long as this man proved useful, Madara would continue to use him. That said, he was sure that Kabuto had his own agenda. Once his goal had been met, he would probably have to kill Kabuto before he was betrayed. "Our forces have engaged the allied Shinobi nations," Kabuto said. "I've sent out most of our reanimated Shinobi to take charge of the battle. I'm sure our enemies will figure out a countermeasure eventually, but they should do a good job of keeping our forces from being defeated for at least a few days." "Good." Summoning, impure world reincarnation was a technique that revived the dead and turned them into slaves. The jutsu was originally created by Tobirama and further enhanced by Orochimaru. Kabuto had taken the technique and supposedly improved it. Madara didn't know much about the jutsu, but he couldn't deny that it was a fearsome technique. "Also, a team of ninja have arrived at Mountain's graveyard," Kabuto continued. "Naruto-kun is with them." "Is that so?" Madara mumbled. Standing beside him, the girl, Karen, shifted. He had already expected Naruto to take the fight to him. He wouldn't stand around and let himself be attacked. Better to strike first. "Send your reanimated shinobi out," Madara ordered. "We'll have Nagato and Itachi deal with Naruto's friends." "Very well." Kabuto bowed low, mockingly so. Madara pretended to ignore the disrespect as Kabuto turned around and left. "Madara," Karen began. "Do not worry," Madara said. "You will get your chance to destroy Naruto Namikaze." Karen nodded and grew silent again. Behind his mask, Madara smiled. Everything was going according to plan. Zux. Naruto frowned as something tickled his brain, like an itch except inside of his head. Several of his clones had been dispelled, killed, though he didn't know who had done them in. All he could get was a sense of vertigo followed by death. That meant they had likely been placed under a genjutsu before being killed. Several more clones dispelled. Standing up, Naruto looked in the direction that his clones were being destroyed. Even as he turned, another team of clones were killed, then another, and another. Someone was killing his clones at a quick rate. What's more, the clones couldn't see them. Whoever is killing my clones is definitely an S-rank ninja. Even if they only have a portion of my chakra, they are still me. Everyone, get ready, Naruto said. Someone is killing my clones and they are coming this way. Everyone tensed. Tenten unsealed a pair of swords, Neji activated his Byakugan, and Rock Lee pounded his fists together. Up above them, Konan and Yugao remained on standby, looking in the direction Naruto indicated. It didn't look like they could see anything. The forest was too thick. Did your clones get a glimpse of the enemy before they died? Asked Kakashi, putting his book away and pocketing it. Beside him, Sakura tightened her combat gloves. Naruto shook his head. No. They killed my clones too quickly for me to see them. An S-rank ninja, then, he sighed as he pulled up his headband, revealing his red Sharingan eye. Sounds like we might have quite the fight on our hands. As though Kakashi's words were prophetic, a black shadow leapt from within the foliage. Naruto and the others reacted instantly, leaping away from their previous locations, which was a good decision. The ground exploded seconds after they jumped. Landing back on the ground, Naruto looked at the 6-meter-wide crater that had suddenly appeared. Two people sat back down on the ground several meters away. One of them was emaciated, his face gaunt and hollow, framed by bright red hair. The other had black hair and red Sharingan eyes. His face had creases in them, making him look older than he was. They both wore a black cloak with red clouds. Nagato, Konan mumbled in shock. Itachi, Naruto said. Naruto. Itachi narrowed his eyes. I've heard from Madara that you killed Sasuke. I wasn't left with much choice, Naruto said. Sasuke was dead set on destroying Konoha, and he tried to kill me. Had I gone easy on him, it would have been me who died. Itachi closed his eyes. I remember you telling me that the last time we met. I did not think you would actually kill him, though. Had he been the Sasuke I remembered, I would have never killed him, Naruto said. I understand why you did it, but I can't forgive you, Itachi said. I wouldn't expect you to. Naruto didn't know how Itachi or Nagato were here, though he could easily make a guess. It was probably the Impure World Reincarnation Jutsu. That meant Kabuto was likely here as well. He hadn't realized that Kabuto and Madara were working together, but he probably should have. Konan, Yugao, Kakashi, Neji, Rock Lee, Sakura, and Tenten were arrayed around what might become a battlefield. Itachi and Nagato were in the middle of this group, surrounded on all sides. Neither appeared concerned. If they had been resurrected, then they would regenerate from any damage, so that made sense. The only way to kill them was to seal them. Konan, Nagato said as he leaned against Itachi. I see you have been living happily with Naruto. Nagato. You needn't say anything, Nagato said. I realized after Madara killed me that I was just being used this whole time. I'm beginning to doubt that Madara and I even had the same goal. That won't stop you from fighting us, will it? Asked Neji. The Impure World Reincarnation technique means that we are being forced to follow the commands of the person who summoned us, Itachi said. Even if we wanted to, I doubt we'll be able to counteract Kabuto's will. Would you even if you could? Asked Naruto. I do not know, Itachi admitted. I am pragmatic, which is why I understand that you probably didn't have much choice, but I still don't like the fact that Sasuke died. However, I also know that the biggest reason for Sasuke's death is because of Madara's influence. Had I made it impossible for Madara to get a hold of Sasuke, perhaps that would have changed. Maybe if you hadn't done so much mental damage to him, he would have been stronger, Kakashi interjected. It is because you fostered hatred in his heart that he betrayed Konoha, went to Orochimaru, and was ultimately corrupted by Madara. Yes, I suppose I am also to blame for what happened, Itachi said. Talking about what could have been isn't going to get us anywhere. Yugao readied her katana as she slid her feet apart. The only thing we can do is move forward. Naruto. Yugao glanced at him out of the corner of her eye. Leave this to Konan, Kakashi, Sakura, and I? We can deal with these two. I'll leave it to you, then, Naruto said. Tenten, Rock Lee, Neji, form up on me. We're heading out. Neji, Rock Lee, and Tenten formed up on Naruto as he ran out of the area. Nagato and Itachi tried to stop him. Itachi, with Nagato still hanging on his shoulder, leapt forward to intercept them. They didn't get far. Konan, with her wings spread, launched several papier-mâché bombs that exploded the moment they struck the ground. This forced the two shinobi to swerve around to avoid being caught in the explosion, where Kakashi, Sakura, and Yugao were waiting for them. The last thing Naruto saw was Kakashi, Yugao, Sakura, and Konan engaging Itachi and Nagato in a fierce life-or-death battle. Zux. Jiraiya knew from the moment word had spread about former rank ninja being brought back to life that the impure reincarnation technique had been used. He wasn't sure who it was that had performed this technique. The only person who should have been capable of it was Orochimaru, but he was dead. Not that it mattered who performed it. The important thing was finding out a way to counteract the technique, which meant creating a method to return those who had been brought back to the afterlife. Killing the caster wouldn't work, since this was a technique that only required the caster's chakra once for the resurrection. There were, as far as he knew, two methods of defeating this technique. The easiest way was to seal the ninja who had been resurrected. Of course, he called it the easiest route, but it was still insanely difficult. It required a sealing master to create the seals. Not only that, but the resurrected ninja had to be immobilized for the seals to be written on them. Given that many of the ninja who had been resurrected were less rank, immobilizing them wasn't going to be easy. The second way for a resurrected ninja to return to the afterlife was for the ninja to undergo a resolution of the heart. Ninja who were resurrected often had lingering attachments or regrets, which kept them anchored to this world. If a ninja found their regrets leaving, if they managed to attain peace within their heart, the impure world reincarnation technique would automatically release them. Jiraiya was in Tsunade's division, the second division, which was in charge of battling on the land of Lightning's coast. He was at the beachhead along with nearly 20,000 shinobi, all of whom were either battling with the White Zetsus or trying to fight against the resurrected ninja. Several dozen meters from his position was Tsunade. She was battling Dan. Dan Kato was Tsunade's former lover. Jiraiya had always been jealous of Dan, who had stolen the heart of the woman he loved, but now, seeing the bitter battle happening between the two, all he felt was pity. Of course, he had his own battle to contend with. Bashozen, Hinomaki. A large spiral of flames blitzed across the ground, toward him, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Jiraiya didn't bother dodging. If he did, then the ninja behind him, who were doing their best to fend off the White Zetsus, would be struck. Instead, he took out a scroll, which he spread across the ground. Foon. The scroll was one that he had created in advance. Activating it caused the seal to light up. The fire, which had been right in front of him, warped and bent. Like a funnel, it traveled toward the seal instead of him. When the fire was sucked up into the seal, Jiraiya rolled up the scroll, stuffed it into his ninja pouch, and leapt away from the place where he had been standing while performing several one-handed hand seals. Doton, Yomi Numa. Slamming his hand into the ground, Jiraiya channeled his chakra through the earth. The area around his opponent suddenly turned into a marshland. The sand became soft and caused the burly figure to sink. Jiraiya didn't let him. He went through another series of hand seals. Harijizo. Jiraiya's long white hair suddenly grew even longer. It wrapped around his body, then hardened into a series of spikes that were harder than steel. Jiraiya, now encased in hair, went through even more hand seals. Hariji Goku. The spikes in Jiraiya's hair shot off, detaching as though they were thrown senbons. Several hundred needle-like spikes of hair soared toward his opponent, who was still stuck in the marsh. The needles never reached him. Before they struck, someone else leapt in the way, taking the attack head-on as though it was nothing. "You need to be more careful," Ginkaku, the one who'd blocked the attack, said. "You're right. Sorry, Ginkaku," the other responded, chastised. Jiraiya's two opponents were Ginkaku and Kinkaku, otherwise known as the Gold and Silver Brothers. They were both burly shinobi, with thick, muscular bodies that were standard of people from Kumagakure. Their skin was dark and they had 3 whisker marks on either side of their cheek. Standard attire for a jonin of Kuma adorned them both. A Kumo headband was tied tightly around their heads, keeping their long silver and gold hair out of their faces. The one known as Ginkaku, whose hair was silver, wielded 2 ancient artifacts from the Rikadu Sennin's time. One of them was a sword known as Shichisiken, which allowed Ginkaku to sever a person's word soul, the word they said the most. The other was a giant gourd called Beni Hisago. It allowed the user to suck up a person's word soul once it has been severed by Shichisiken. This also meant that the person whose word soul was sucked into the gourd would also be sucked up with it once they said that word. That was how the curse worked. This ninja is tough, Kinkaku. He is, Ginkaku. We haven't even been able to draw out his word soul. Jiraiya had been playing it safe, attacking from long range and never letting these two get close enough to use their treasures. As a ninjutsu specialist whose greatest strength was summoning, keeping the two away wasn't difficult, despite how strong they were. Right now, He only needed to worry about Kinkaku, who had a rope known as Kokenjo tied around his arm. That rope had the ability to draw out a person's word soul. "Of course I'm tough," Jiraiya called out as he went through several hand seals. "Don't you two know who I am? I am the great Jiraiya, the Toad Sage of Mount Myaboku. You're not going to be able to defeat me with those weapons. Kushios, Yataiku Zushi no Jutsu." Without warning, a massive toad appeared above Kinkaku and Ginkaku, who leapt out of the way as the toad fell on the beach. While the attack had missed, it did an admirable job of separating them. Jiraiya went through even more hand seals. "Keke, Hyoro." A toad appeared in front of Jiraiya. It was small and had pinkish skin. A gray band was wrapped around its stomach, and its eyes were a bright yellow. The enemy ninja closest to the toad summons was Ginkaku. The gourd toad shot out its tongue, trying to latch onto Ginkaku and pull him into its mouth, but of course, Ginkaku wasn't going to stand still. He wasn't an S-ranked shinobi for nothing. Just as Jiraiya expected, Ginkaku leapt back several feet and then slammed Shichisekin into the toad's tongue. This resulted in the toad squealing and retracting its tongue quickly before disappearing in a burst of smoke. That was okay. Jiraiya had already finished his hand seals. Kaden, Gokyaku no Jutsu. A fireball spewed from Jiraiya's mouth. Kinkaku waved Bashozen. Several rows of earth rose from the ground, blocking the fireball from hitting Ginkaku. That was okay. It was just a distraction. Kage Bunshine no Jutsu. Jiraiya created a single. The clone rushed forward, leapt over the large stakes of earth, and created a Rasengan in his hand. He descended toward the ground and tried to slam the Rasengan into Ginkaku. His opponent leapt back, but during that time, Jiraiya, the real one, had rushed behind him and kicked Shichisekin out of Ginkaku's hand. He would have done more, but Ginkaku had rushed forward and thrust out his left hand. Kokenjo, which was wrapped around his left arm, glowed brightly. Bind and draw. Jiraiya didn't flinch as he felt his word soul being drawn out of his body, but he couldn't say it felt pleasant. It was like something had latched onto his internal organs and yanked on them. This was followed by a strange inky feeling, as though his blood was being drawn from his body and soaked into a sponge. This isn't good. Now that the Kokenjo had drawn out his word soul, he needed to be careful not to say the word that he used the most. Fortunately, he wasn't like Naruto with his catchphrase. The word Jiraiya used the most wasn't something that could be said on the battlefield. Rasengan. Since Kinkaku was so close, Jiraiya was able to slam his Rasengan into his enemy this time. Kinkaku screamed as the spiraling sphere drilled into him. Jiraiya felt some resistance. Then, with a shout, Jiraiya pushed the Rasengan into Kinkaku's body even more. The body was ground away before Kinkaku was sent flying backward. Brother. Ginkaku tried to reach his brother, but Jiraiya created another shadow clone to intercept him. While Ginkaku defeated the clone in less than a second, that less than a second was enough for Jiraiya, who sped through more hand seals. Ranjishigami no Jutsu. Jiraiya felt his chakra go to his head. His hair suddenly extended, growing to an incredible length in less time than it took to blink. The thickly bundled hair slammed into Ginkaku without mercy. Then it wrapped around him. Ginkaku struggled to break free, but Jiraiya sent even more chakra into his hair, reinforcing it to the point where not even a Baijuwu would be able to escape easily. "It looks like this is the end, isn't it?" Jiraiya said as he held up his finger. His plan was to use the Shikoku Fun, the finger-carving seal technique, to engrave seals on Ginkaku's body. He was going to seal away Ginkaku without the need to waste paper or time. Well, that was the plan anyway. "Let go of my brother." A shout came from behind him. Distracted, Jiraiya had no real choice but to let go of Ginkaku and leap away. As the ground that he had been standing on cratered, Jiraiya looked at the large cloud of dust being kicked up inside. He was not surprised to see a fully healed Ginkaku when the sand dispersed. That impure reincarnation technique sure was troublesome. "You two are real pieces of work," Jiraiya said. Anyone else would have lost by now. Of course, part of the reason he wasn't doing so well likely had to do with the fact that he only had one arm. Even though he could now use most of his jutsu via one-handed hand seals, it still took him longer because he was so used to having two hands. His brain was hardwired to use regular hand seals. "Humph. I could say the same to you, geezer," Ginkaku said. "You're a real pain in the ass. Why don't you just hurry up and die?" "No can do," Jiraiya said. "The only one who is going to the afterlife are you clowns." Jiraiya had been trying to think of a way he could defeat these two, but it was hard. They would obviously not return to death themselves. That meant he had to seal them. However, sealing 2 S-ranked ninja who didn't want to be sealed was a tall order. His only silver lining was that neither Kinkaku or Ginkaku were any good with regular jutsu. They relied so heavily on the Rikadu Sennin's artifacts that they didn't have any jutsu to use. "You think you can beat us?" Ginkaku asked. "I think this geezer needs to realize that he's outclassed," Kinkaku added. A strange wind blew across the battlefield, an ominous wind, which sent chills down Jiraiya's spine. It was only now that Jiraiya remembered something he'd heard about the Silver and Gold brothers. Long ago, these two had been eaten by the Kyuubi. Rather than give up and die, they gorged themselves on the Kyuubi's flesh and were eventually spat out. It was their eating of the Kyuubi's flesh that gave them such incredible chakra capacity, and also, dark red chakra bubbled from Kinkaku's and Ginkaku's pores. The chakra took shape. Red fox ears sprouted from their heads, 2 tails sprouted from their backs, and their posture changed. They no longer stood up straight. They were hunched over like a pair of animals. It wasn't long before the red chakra covered their bodies entirely, to the point where their original bodies were no longer visible. It reminded Jiraiya of Naruto's previous Stage 2 form. "It's time to show you the power we gained when we were inside of the Kyuubi," Kinkaku said. "We're gonna kill you," Ginkaku agreed. The air around the two shinobi had become heavy, dense, and filled with malice. Jiraiya's bones creaked from the pressure these two were emitting. It wasn't quite as bad as Naruto when he went 4 tails, but these two had at least enough chakra to match 3-tailed Naruto. "Well, this looks slightly problematic," Jiraiya muttered. "I don't support we could talk this out." "It's too late for that," Ginkaku roared as he tried to slam his tails into Jiraiya. Being the nimble old guy that he was, Jiraiya hopped back, avoiding the attack. Not that avoiding it meant much. A mass of superheated sand slammed into Jiraiya, searing his face. If it weren't for him activating his Hiraishin in time, he might have very well gotten his face burned off. Even with his hardened hair surrounding him like a barrier, Jiraiya was buffeted and sent flying through the air from the shockwave that the tail kicked up. Skidding across the ground, Jiraiya went through another set of hand seals. Katen, Enden. After gathering oil in his mouth, Jiraiya spat out several tiny pellets that instantly ignited after leaving his mouth. The small fireballs didn't strike Kinkaku or Ginkaku. It wouldn't have done anything. They hit the ground around the two ninja, kicking up more dust and smoke. Jiraiya used this moment to take out a scroll, set it on the ground, and activate it with a hand seal. Poof! Smoke burst from the scroll. When it cleared, another Jiraiya was found sitting on the scroll. It was a clone. After getting his arm ripped off by Nagato, Jiraiya had gone back to Mount Myaboku, where he'd retrained himself in the use of Sage Mode. It had taken a lot of work. It had taken many lumps from Old Man Fukusaku's cane. However, Jiraiya had finally mastered Sage Mode, and, using the same method that his godson had thought up, used a summoning scroll to summon a clone that could be used to activate the mode for him. That brat sometimes comes up with the best ideas. The clone dispelled, sending all of the excess chakra straight into Jiraiya. He felt his muscles strengthen. His body became far stronger, his chakra surpassed what it had been, and his senses became enhanced beyond the norm. In short, he felt like he could kick the ass of any ninja nearby. Ginkaku and Kinkaku, seeing their attack fail, charged at Jiraiya, who remained calm as he watched them come closer. The two were fast. No doubts about it. With Kyuubi's chakra enhancing them, they were even faster than Hokage when he opened his gates. However, with Sage Mode, it didn't matter how fast they were. "I have to finish this in 30 minutes. Jiraiya slid his feet apart as he adopted the frog kata stance. The gold and silver brothers were barely 5 meters away. He took a deep breath. 3 meters preparing himself, Jiraiya counted down in his head. 2 meters it was time. 1 meter. Kinkaku and Ginkaku tried to attack him in a pincer maneuver, coming in on his left and right. Jiraiya leapt into the air. The two stopped themselves before they could hit each other, but they could do nothing as he launched a kick at their heads. Bang! Ginkaku and Kinkaku were blown away. Even though Jiraiya's feet didn't hit them, the effects of Sage Mode ensured that they were hit anyway. As he landed back on the ground, Jiraiya decided to go after Ginkaku first. Shikoku Fun. As master at sealing, Jiraiya's skills when it came to seals was second only to Naruto. Carving seals into someone else's skin was an easy task for him. That's exactly what he did here. Emitting chakra from his index and middle finger, Jiraiya carved a seal into Ginkaku's back. He needed to use more chakra than normal, and his finger burned like it was being set on fire as he touched the corrosive chakra, but he managed to complete the seal thanks to Sage Mode. "What is this?" Ginkaku shouted. "A seal that I made up 2 seconds ago," Jiraiya shouted back, grinning as he slammed his only remaining hand into the seal. "Edo Tensei, Fun. Gra. Brother." The seals on Ginkaku's body rapidly spread from Jiraiya's hand to the rest of his body. They formed a series of chains that wrapped around him like snakes of ink. It wasn't long after the seal spread that the Kyuubi's chakra receded back into Ginkaku, withdrawing and leaving the former Kumo ninja in his original state. The seals continued moving, continued expanding, until they eventually covered his entire body in black ink. Ginkaku flopped several times as though trying to escape. It wouldn't do any good. Jiraiya might not have been able to release the impure resurrection technique, but that seal would keep his enemy from breaking free regardless of how strong he was. "Damn you!" Ginkaku roared as he tried to crush Jiraiya with his tails. Jiraiya dodged the tails, hopping back and forth as he created a shadow clone and then created a Rasengan. The clone worked in sync with him. The Rasengan in his hand became bigger, much bigger. It expanded in size until it was nearly 2 times the size of him. Once it was that large, Jiraiya leapt into the air, the clone sacrificed itself to provide a distraction, and he descended toward Ginkaku with his hand thrust out. Senpo, Chudoma Rasengan. Jiraiya had never used this jutsu before. The Rasengan was created by swirling chakra together in many directions and condensing it. This worked along the same lines, except it was hundreds of times more powerful. The shockwave that was unleashed when the Rasengan struck Ginkaku was massive, strong enough that it slammed into Jiraiya, its creator, without mercy. He grunted as he was sent flying into the sky. From so high up, he had a bird's eye view of what happened with his attack. Traveling across the beach was the shockwave itself. It tore apart the ground, an expanding cloud of sand that shot in every direction like a storm. Every battle that had been taking place near him was interrupted. The ninja and white Zetsus were all swept by the shockwave and sent sailing. In the center of this shockwave, where his Rasengan had struck, a giant sphere of chakra continued to grow. It increased in size. 1 meter in diameter. 2 meters 3. 5. 10. Meanwhile, the shockwave struck the cliff of the beach head. Jiraiya, still in the air, winced as massive cracks spread along the cliff. Large chunks of rock fell, only to be destroyed by the fierce winds that his jutsu kicked up. "This is a lot more powerful than I had expected it to be." Most of the cliff was destroyed by now, and as the explosion from his jutsu dispersed, Jiraiya could see that the beach didn't exist anymore either. It was gone. Completely. As though it had been wiped from the face of the earth. Now all that remained was the sea. Jiraiya landed on the ground at what was now the edge of the newly reformed cliff. He looked at the vast expanse of sea and scratched his head. "I wonder if that destroyed Ginkaku's body so completely that he can even reform," he mumbled. He didn't know everything about the impure reincarnation technique, it was not a technique that he had studied in depth. However, from what he knew, the body of any ninja resurrected from that technique should be able to reform their body no matter how damaged. However, what if the body was no longer even around? Could it revive if it had been reduced to molecules? "Jiraiya!" an angry female voice said from behind him. Turning slowly, oh so slowly, Jiraiya found himself looking into the irritated face of one Tsunade Senju. "Ah. Tsunade. Would you mind telling me why you decided to destroy the beach like that?" Tsunade asked. Jiraiya gulped as he realized that he might be even more screwed now than he was before. He already missed the gold and silver brothers. Zux, Tenten, Rock Lee, and Neji moved alongside Naruto, leaping through the trees. They were heading in the direction that Itachi and Nagato had come from. Chances were good that the Akatsuki base was located somewhere in that direction. "Naruto," Neji said. "There's a person several kilometers ahead." "What do they look like?" asked Naruto. "Long red hair, not very tall. She has 2 different types of dojutsu." "2 different types of dojutsu. Be prepared for anything," Naruto said out loud. He received a chorus of "hi" from Rock Lee and Tenten. Neji nodded as he prepared to engage in this new enemy. Naruto also prepared himself. He was sure he knew who they were coming up on, though he also knew that he could be wrong. "Shinra Tensei! Scatter!" Naruto shouted. Everyone leapt away from the tree branch just in time, for the tree branch exploded in a shower of bark and wood splinters. Naruto landed on another branch several meters away. Neji had landed with him, but Rock Lee and Tenten ended up separated from them. "Banshu Tenen!" Naruto felt a tug on his body seconds before he was yanked through the air. Clicking his tongue, Naruto stuck out his arm and created a Rasengan in the palm of his hand. It wasn't long before he found the person who was trying to pull him to her. It was the girl who'd been with Sasuke. Just like Neji had said, this girl had two different eyes. Her left eye was the red of a Sharingan and her right had the Rinnegan in it. Thrusting out his hand, Naruto watched as the girl, Karen he thought her name was, leapt away when she realized that he was attacking her. His Rasengan plowed into the ground. An explosion went up. Dirt and foliage flew everywhere. Karen landed on a tree several meters away. "Let me guess," Naruto began dryly, "you're here to get revenge on me for killing Sasuke, right?" Karen's eyes hardened. "I'm going to kill you for what you did to Sasuke-kun." There were so many things he could have said to that. He could have told her that it was Sasuke's fault for trying to kill him, could have said that Sasuke had brought death on himself, could have raged at her hypocrisy. But he didn't. Naruto knew that it was useless to try and reason with someone who didn't want to be reasoned with. This girl was out for blood. That was all she wanted. "Naruto," Tenten said as she, Rock Lee, and Neji landed on the ground near him. "Please take Neji and go. Leave this girl to Rock Lee and I?" "Alright." Naruto didn't argue. "Come on, Neji. Tenten and Rock Lee have got this." "You aren't going anywhere," Karen shouted as she held out her hand, no doubt prepared to fire off another Shinra Tensei at Naruto's retreating back. She would never get the chance. "Sashoryu." Karen was forced to leap away as several dozen kunai with exploding tags attached to them sailed at her. They missed, slamming into the tree behind her and blowing it apart. As wood splinters flew everywhere, Karen landed on her feet and glared at Tenten and Rock Lee, who stood in front of the retreating Naruto's back. "Your fight is with me," Tenten said as she brandished her two scimitars. "Zux." "Kakashi," Itachi began, "I see you've become even more proficient with your Sharingan. I'm impressed that a non-Uchiha can show such an affinity with our clan's Dujutsu." "Thanks." Kakashi replied with a cheery smile. "I've been practicing." Unlike most shinobi battles, which were fraught with jutsu flying everywhere and mass destruction, their battle was relatively non-destructive. He and Itachi had been attacking each other with genjutsu and sometimes taijutsu. They'd messed with each other's visual perceptions, changed their sense of direction, and occasionally struck each other with fists and feet. So far, neither had been able to land a decisive blow on the other. "It shows," Itachi complimented as another one of his illusions was dispelled by Kakashi. "Tell me something," Kakashi said, "do you hate Naruto?" Itachi sighed. "I had a feeling you would bring this up. It is true that I'm angry at Naruto for killing Sasuke, but it's not as if I hate him for what happened. I watched after Naruto for a few years when I was still in the Anbu. I know he isn't the kind of person who would kill his friend unless he wasn't given a choice. In truth, I blame myself for what happened to my brother. Perhaps if I was stronger, if I hadn't fostered Sasuke's hatred, if I had discovered another way, then maybe Sasuke wouldn't have turned out the way he did." "I see." Kakashi grew quiet for a moment. He was molding his chakra and didn't want Itachi to notice. "I'm glad to hear that." A clone sprang up from behind Itachi, kunai in hand, prepared to impale Itachi through the back. However, the moment the kunai struck him, the Uchiha burst into ravens. Kakashi knew that this was another illusion. He didn't know what kind of genjutsu this was, but he wasn't going to let it take hold. He used his Sharingan to dispel it. Itachi was suddenly right in front of him. "Don't tell me I was under an illusion this whole time?" Kakashi ducked, feeling several strands of his hair get cut off from the kunai. That was way too close. Thrusting his palm toward Itachi's chin in an uppercut, Kakashi was not surprised when his opponent tilted and avoided the attack. Disappointed certainly. Even so, he'd expected this to happen, he'd planned for it and prepared a countermeasure. Before Itachi could move far, Kakashi leapt back as Sakura descended from the sky and slammed into him. The earth around her fist exploded. The ground was shaken, cracks spreading, large chunks breaking apart. Itachi had burst into ravens again. Another genjutsu. As Itachi reappeared, Sakura kicked up several of the broken chunks of earth and punched them. Each chunk flew forward at Itachi, who was forced to evade them. Kakashi waited for a second, until Itachi was suitably distracted, and then he rushed forward, separating the distance between them and engaging in another taijutsu battle. Duck. Kakashi avoided a kunai to the head. He reacted with a kick to Itachi's shins, though his attack was leapt over. Kakashi raised his forearms, using them as guards against Itachi's kicks. His foe landed on the ground. Sakura came in from behind, but Itachi must have sensed her presence, for he spun around and avoided her punch. Sakura leapt back when Itachi tried to attack her. Kakashi spat out several balls of fire, though they were all avoided by Itachi despite being at point-blank range. Reacting with enviable swiftness, Itachi attempted to impale Kakashi with a kunai, but Kakashi had seen the attack coming with his Sharingan. He swerved around the thrust attack, then trapped Itachi's arm between his arm and torso. At the same time, his Sharingan shifted, going from a regular Sharingan to a Mangekyo. Kamui. Itachi's eyes went wide as he realized what was happening. He tried to respond, but it was already too late. He was trapped within Kakashi's jutsu. The air around them both swirled, large and black, like a vortex of nothingness that was trying to fill itself by sucking in everything. Kakashi leapt back, feet sliding along the ground as Itachi's body was ripped apart from the jutsu. Leaning over, hands on his knees, Kakashi tried to regain his breath. Kamui cost a lot of chakra. He could probably only use the jutsu 6 or 7 more times. Several feet away, Itachi lay in 2 parts. His entire torso had been born from his legs. Despite this, he was still alive, no doubt thanks to the impure world reincarnation. "You really have grown strong," Itachi said, and even as he spoke, his body was being healed. Particles floated through the air. They coalesced around Itachi, reforming his once broken body. "I don't support. I could convince you to stay down," Kakashi offered. "I'm afraid not," Itachi replied as he stood back up. "I thought that would be the case," Kakashi sighed. "Ninja like him never had it easy." Zux. This had to be the place. Naruto studied the cavern walls as he and Neji walked along what seemed like a multi-passage corridor. There wasn't much to look at. As they walked, their footsteps echoed all around them. It seemed abnormally loud, this sound, which rang in his ears like someone continuously banging a gong. "Naruto," Neji said, suddenly stopping. "There are 2 people up ahead. One of them is in this direction, and the other is in that direction." Neji pointed at 2 different passages, which separated about a meter in front of them, both passages becoming too dark for even Naruto to see for more than a meter or 2 in. These passages reminded him of the mouth to a monster. "What do these 2 look like?" asked Naruto. "One of them is wearing a swirl mask." "That would be the one calling himself Madara." Naruto nodded at Kurama's words. "And the other?" "He's wearing a hood." Neji narrowed his eyes. "He has snake-like patterns on his skin, almost like his skin is made of scales. He also has a tail." "A tail?" Naruto thought that sounded familiar, but he couldn't place who it might be. "What's he doing?" "It looks like he's staring at a board with pebbles on it." "Yeah. Not ringing any bells." "Still. Go after that guy. He might be the one who's using the impure world reincarnation. If possible, make him release the jutsu. If not, capture him alive so we can have someone else force him to release it." "All right." Neji nodded. "Be careful, Naruto." "Yeah, you too." Zux. Konan had been doing her best to keep Nagato's attention on her, flitting about through the air, making him attack her with his jutsu. Yugao was somewhere within the forest. The reason Konan was trying to keep his eyes on her was so her partner could sneak up and attack. Nagato's aim wasn't as good as it could have been. This Nagato was crippled, his body emaciated. He looked up at her with his Rinnegan eyes visible through parted red hair. He held out a single hand, fingers played. Banshu Tanin. Konan felt the tug as Nagato's technique yanked her toward the ground. She knew more about this jutsu's flaws than anyone save Nagato himself. Instead of trying to fight it, she flew forward, toward Nagato and prepared one of her own jutsu. Kami Shuriken. Thanks to Nagato's Banshu Tanin, all of the shuriken flew at him far faster than they would have otherwise, though this was Nagato. He probably knew she would do this. Indeed, after he finished his first attack, he raised his other hand at her. Shinra Tensei. Konan swerved out of the way, barrel rolling through the air like a mad woman. All of her shuriken sliced through the airspace she'd been flying. Paper chakram. Holding her hands over her head, Konan gathered paper, large quantities which swirled around her head, forming a large chakram. These slips weren't regular paper but paper bombs. She threw the chakram at Nagato, who didn't even bother to move. His body opened up as though he were made of machine parts instead of flesh and blood. Then several dozen missiles shot from him, striking the chakram and exploding. The paper was shredded. It tried to scatter, blowing to the 4 winds, but Konan channeled her chakra and exerted influence over the paper. She moved her hands like a conductor leading an orchestra. The paper quivered before shooting at Nagato, who leapt backwards just in time to avoid the massive explosion that followed. He knew I was using paper bombs? Of course he did. This is Nagato. Konan sent more chakra into her paper bombs, launching them at Nagato in groups of 2 and 3s. Rather than dodging, Nagato raised his hands and a shield sprang up around him. The paper bombs exploded against the shield, detonating with an earth-shaking rumble. Konan didn't stand still as Nagato was consumed by flames. She flew away, knowing better than to assume he'd been defeated by something like this, and indeed, a second later, she heard a shout from within the fire. Kushios no Jutsu. The smoke and fire cleared away, revealing a large bird with a number of piercings, a giant beak that resembled a drill, and Rinnegan eyes. It was the giant drill-beaked bird. This was one of Nagato's summons. With a loud caw, the bird flapped its massive wings. It flew into the air and shot straight for her. Konan flew backwards and held out her hands, unleashing a massive amount of paper slips that formed a wall in front of the bird. This didn't do much. It broke through with ease. However, Konan went through several hand seals, and suddenly, all of the paper that the bird scattered slammed against it. The paper slips bound the bird, which tried to fight to no avail. Konan formed another hand seal. Kai. Fierce wind slammed into her as the detonation displaced the air in front of her. Konan flapped her wings to keep steady, watching the fireball from her paper bombs. She hoped that would be enough to defeat this thing. As the fire dispersed, Konan saw that the bird was gone and breathed a sigh of relief. That was too close. Now to deal with Nagato. Konan looked down to discover that Nagato was already in combat with Yugao, who must have tried to launch a sneak attack while she'd been fighting the summons. The woman was doing her best. Her blade struck at Nagato swiftly and without pause, a mere blur of silvery luminescence. This did very little. Nagato was using the Asura path. His body glistened with augmented mechanical parts. He raised a hand, which split apart and revealed several dozen metal wires that sought Yugao. Though she managed to dodge each attack, one of the wires wrapped around her blade and attempted to yank it out of her hands, while the others came in from behind. They would impale her. Konan wouldn't let that happen. Manipulating her paper to create 6 chakrams, she sent them all sailing at the wires. Nagato was so busy fighting Yugao that he didn't notice them until they had already sliced through the wires. He jumped back, but Konan sent her chakram at him while Yugao threw the wire off her sword and attacked from the front. Shinra Tensei. Spinning around, Nagato released a large shock wave of chakra that slammed into Konan's chakram and sent Yugao flying. As her partner skid along the ground, Konan landed next to her, the wings on her back retracting. "I'm impressed by how well you two work together," Nagato said. "Konan, it seems you and she have become familiar with each other." "We have." Konan allowed. "Yugao is a part of my family, so it's only natural that we would." "I see." Nagato closed his eyes and smiled. "You've found happiness. I am glad. I have always wanted to apologize for what I did. I pushed you and everyone else away. I allowed Madara to use me. In the end, all that did was make me susceptible to betrayal. I'm glad you left before that happened." Konan felt an acute pain in her chest, like a stake being driven through her heart. She took a slow, shuddering breath, and said, "I had been hoping to save you. Naruto and I had been so sure we could do it, but then the war happened." "That was my fault," Nagato told her. "You can't blame yourself for what happened to me. I was the one who lost my way." "Nagato. It seems this battle will not end unless you manage to seal me, or the person who resurrected me releases the technique," Nagato said. "I am sorry, Konan. I wish we didn't have to battle." "Me too," Konan said before. Once more, the entire area became engulfed in the sounds of combat. Zux. Rock Lee charged at Karen while Tenten unwound a scroll from which several dozen weapons were stored. Kaifu no Jutsu. Nearly a dozen weapons of varying size flew at Karen. Swords, kunai, shuriken, maces, scythes. Their sharp tips gleamed brightly in the sparse amounts of sunlight that filtered through the canopy. Karen raised her hands. One was pointed at the weapons. The other was pointed at Rock Lee. Shinra Tensei. Rock Lee knew of this technique, but even though he knew what it did, that didn't mean he could dodge while moving at this speed. Something invisible slammed into him. It was an incredible force. Rock Lee would have screamed as he was pushed back by the powerful invisible attack, but he couldn't even do that much. He was slammed into a tree, which shattered under his back. Then he hit another, and another. Despite how his body ached from that attack, Rock Lee didn't give in. He reoriented himself. Landing on the ground, he skidded backwards for several meters before stopping. Crossing arms, he took a deep breath, and then released his power. Kaimon. Kai. He felt the constraints in his brain disappear. Power flooded his body as his muscles, held back by his own mind, gained their full strength. Human. Kai. More power. Rock Lee's body was rejuvenated. Energy flowed through him, unlimited and powerful, like a mighty hurricane. Over by Karen, Tenten was using Sagu, Tensasai, a technique where she tossed a scroll over her opponent's head and unleashed hundreds of weapons, which rained down from above. They didn't seem to be doing much. Karen had both her hands raised. A barrier of some kind was keeping the weapons at bay. They struck the invisible shield. Despite how it looked like Tenten's attack was ineffective, Karen was wincing, proving that she was having trouble. She must be running out of chakra. Simon. Kai. Blood pumped through Rock Lee at an accelerated rate. Like a mighty river, it flowed through his body, moving swiftly to increase his power. Were he to look in a mirror, he knew that his skin would have been dark red. This should be enough. Bending his knees, Rock Lee shot forward. He was on Karen within seconds. She noticed him. She was looking right at him with her Sharingan eye. However, from the way it widened, her body was not accustomed to the speed he had moved. It was just like with Sasuke during their bout before the Chunin exams. Even if she could see him, she wasn't fast enough to react. He slammed his foot into her chin, sending the girl rocketing into the air, and then leaping after her. Rock Lee hit her again. And again. Again. Each strike sent her further into the air. Finally, he appeared above her and slammed an open palm into her. Urarenge. It wasn't even a second later that Karen struck the ground head first. Dust flew everywhere. Fierce winds made Tenten cover her face. Rock Lee landed beside her, staring into the expanding cloud. When the dust cleared, it revealed Karen, lying in a crater, her neck bent at an awkward angle. She wasn't moving or breathing. Rock Lee sighed and resealed the 3 gates that he had opened. Fortunately, he'd grown strong enough that 3 gates weren't debilitating. "It seems our fight is done," he said. "Looks like it." Tenten pouted. "I didn't do much more than serve as a distraction." "Yosh. But you were such a magnificent fighter, Tenten. You are the lotus blossom of Team Guy. Are you patronizing me?" "Of course not. How could you say that?" Tenten sighed. "Never mind. Let's hurry up and help the others. I'm sure they could use a hand." Zux. Neji was grateful that he had been born a Hyuga. It allowed him to keep his opponent in sight, even though they were separated by several walls. It also meant that his enemy couldn't sneak up on him. His opponent hadn't moved from where he had been standing, though whether this was because the man hadn't noticed him or believed himself to be invisible, Neji didn't know. He walked through the cavernous space, moving past several large stalagmites. The cavern opened up. His enemy, cloaked from head to toe, still hadn't moved. "Neji Hyuga," the man finally said, still not turning around. "I had wondered who Naruto-kun would choose for his team. I'm not surprised that you were one of the people chosen. That Byakugan is a boon when infiltrating an enemy base." "You know who I am, yet I don't know who you are," Neji said. The back of his neck was prickling. Something was wrong. This man was far too relaxed. "Oh, but you do know who I am." Finally, the man turned around and pulled down his hood. A face covered in white scales, with yellow eyes and purple markings around them, greeted him. "It's been a while since you and I met, but I'm sure you recognize me." Feeling the chill increase, Neji narrowed his eyes. "I see. Yes, I recognize you now. Kabuto Yakushi. I haven't seen you since the Chunin exams with Naruto and the others. You look a lot different than I remember." "Indeed." Spreading his arms, Kabuto smiled. "I have changed a lot. I've become stronger. Stronger even than Orochimaru in his prime. I've surpassed Orochimaru." Kabuto was acting insane. That smile, those eyes, the strange feeling emanating from him, all of it made Neji wary. This man was dangerous at the best of times. Now that he had changed this much, there was no telling what kind of troublesome foe he would be. "I was hoping Anko would be with Naruto-kun," Kabuto continued. "I would have liked to use her cursed mark to help me suppress the personalities of the ninja I've summoned, but I guess that was expecting too much. Well, no matter. Even if I can't suppress them entirely, I can still control their actions." "You are not going to be controlling anyone for long." Neji slid into the gentle fist stance. "I'm going to stop you here and now." "Oh? Are you?" Kabuto went through several hand seals. 4 snakes appeared behind him. He went through more hand seals. The snakes got bigger. "Do you really think you can defeat me? I'm the most powerful shinobi in existence, the one who has come closest to the Rikadu Sennin. A single Jonin level ninja will not be enough to contend with me." The snakes raced through the air like coiled springs let loose, coming in from different angles. It looked like they aimed to pen him in. Kaiten isn't going to be strong enough for this. In that case, Neji spread his legs wider and sent chakra into his palms. The snakes got closer. They were practically on top of him now. Haki Hasengaki. The first snake lunged, its mouth open wide, and Neji struck it with a chakra-infused palm. A powerful wave of chakra slammed into the snake. With his supreme chakra control, Neji forced the chakra to shake. The snake screeched. Then it exploded. Haki Hasengaki. He struck the next snake before it could even attack him. It wasn't a frontal assault. This time he struck the snake on its side. The results were gory. The snake was ripped apart, blood splattering everywhere. Neji spared himself the fate of being covered in red by leaping backwards. The remaining two snakes attacked in a pincer maneuver. Haki Heiaku Nayu Hachisho. Neji struck the snake on his left twice. It jerked back as though stung. He spun around, striking the snake that was now behind him twice, causing it to also rear back. Neji turned again. The other snake was closing in once more. 4 strikes to the nose sent it reeling. A split second later, Neji was once more turning around to face the other snake. 8 strikes. 8 large red welts appeared on the snake's face as the chakra did its damage. 16. 32. Neji continued assaulting the 2 snakes with increasingly fast palm thrusts. Red welts appeared all over their scales, signs that the chakra he was injecting into them was doing damage. His attacks weren't attacking the outside, but the inside. Capillaries were bursting. Blood was boiling. The snakes screeched as he attacked them over and over again. Finally, Neji launched his 128th strike, making for a total of 62 strikes per snake. While the snakes remained whole, they were no longer able to battle. They fell to the ground with a massive crash. The earth shook. Neji leapt over them and rushed toward Kabuto, deciding to take the fight to him. Only Kabuto wasn't there. Neji stopped, frowned, and tried to find him with his Byakugan, except he couldn't. It wasn't because he simply couldn't find Kabuto. That would have been impossible. However, it looked like there were multiple Kabutos. Much like Naruto's shadow clones allowed him to mask his presence by having clones that evenly split his chakra, Kabuto had some method of evenly splitting his chakra to make it impossible for Neji to locate the real one. "I see you have more tricks up your sleeve," Neji said. "Just what I expected from a snake." "You flatter me," Kabuto's voice reverberated across the cavern. It was impossible to tell where it had come from. "You are indeed talented, worthy of the title genius in every sense of the word. However, you should know that being a prodigy doesn't mean you are strong." Neji kept his eyes peeled. With the Byakugan, nothing escaped his notice. He had a 360-degree field of vision, plus the ability to see chakra. While right now it looked like there were several Kabutos around him, that would eventually change once the real one attacked, and when he did, Neji would be ready. "I have been working hard. Yes, ever since Orochimaru was killed by Sasuke, I have been training to surpass Orochimaru." Several meters to Neji's left, numerous snakes appeared. They coiled around a pillar. Neji spun and rushed over. Haki Kushu. A vacuum flew from his hand. It struck the pillar, decimating it, but it didn't strike the snakes. As the pillar crumbled like a house of cards, the snakes slithered away. "You see, Hyuga Neji? My abilities are not something that just anyone can gain. Among the many ninja who exist in this world, only a few are granted the special privilege of receiving the training that I have undergone. And of those ninja, none have taken their abilities as far as I have, not even Naruto Namikaze." It was becoming obvious that there really was nothing he could do while Kabuto was not fully revealed. Neji consigned himself to waiting. He wouldn't attack until Kabuto attacked first. Once that happened, he would end this battle quickly. "Do you know what Sage Mode is?" asked Kabuto. Neji didn't reply. "It is a technique that one can only learn from 2 different places. Mount Myaboku and Ryuchi Cave." "I am going to assuming that you learned Sage Mode from Ryuchi Cave," Neji finally said. "However, I have yet to see why I should care." Kabuto's chuckle bounced all over the place. "That's simple. You see, with Sage Mode, I have become all but invincible. Not even the vaunted Naruto Namikaze can defeat me. Even if he and Jiraiya fought me at the same time, their end would be inevitable. You, a mere jonin who only holds the strength of a genius, does not possess the power to defeat me." Through his Byakugan, Neji spotted Kabuto behind him. The man was regurgitated from the mouth of a snake. He looked even more different than before. His skin, which had scales covering part of it, was now fully covered in white scales. His yellow eyes had slits running through them. Horns jutted from his head. Kabuto went through a set of hand seals, then his stomach expanded, as though it were a balloon being filled with oxygen. Senpo, Hokage no Jutsu. A strange, dragon-like entity spewed from Kabuto's mouth. It was a violent red with ethereal flames engulfing it, and it carried a purple orb in its left claw. Neji didn't know what that orb was, or what this creature was, but he knew better than to let it finish its attack. He turned around and rushed forward. The dragon coiled itself tightly around the orb. Neji screamed as he was assaulted by both light and sound. His Byakugan automatically shut off as his visual sense was overwhelmed. He covered his ears with his hands. Sticky, warm fluid drizzled down his ears. Blood. It felt like the vessels in his ear canal were bursting. He couldn't hear anything, he couldn't see anything, which meant he was open to attack. In the event something like this happened, Neji had only one option left. Do something unexpected. He had no idea where Kabuto was, but it didn't matter. Neji had resolved himself. He ignored the ringing in his ears, the intense pain of his burnt cornea, and expelled chakra from every pore in his body. Neji spun around, forming a bright barrier made of chakra, but he didn't stop there. As he performed the Kaiden, he made the barrier expanded so that, rather than being a shield, it became a sonar. Kabuto was on his left and coming in fast. Juknyo Ishigekishin. The first thing Neji did was strike Kabuto, who was clearly not expecting to be attacked, with the technique. As the snake-like ninja was sent sailing, Neji attacked the strange technique of Kabuto's. Haki Kushu. With pinpoint accuracy, Neji sent a vacuum of chakra into the dragon-like creature. The chakra used in the technique was disrupted. It dispersed. The light disappeared, the sound ceased assaulting his ears, and Neji opened his eyes to find Kabuto staring at him in disbelief. "How were you able to negate my jutsu?" Kabuto asked. Neji's response was to resume his gentle fist stance. "You're not the only one who has trained to surpass his limits. Now, let's continue. I'll show you that being a genius does not mean I'm incapable of exceeding my own limits." Zux. The cavern that Naruto found himself in was massive. Hidden away underneath a mountain, he couldn't tell whether it had been made naturally or by man. He walked by several pillars that were 2 times thicker than he was tall. The ground seemed to slope downwards. Frowning as he wandered further in, Naruto eventually discovered a strange glow coming from somewhere up ahead. "I sense the chakra of my fellow Byakugan here." "Really? Do you know what the chakra is being used for?" "No. I cannot tell that much. I only sense the chakra, not what it's doing." "Then I guess we'll have to keep going if we want to find out." Naruto moved closer and soon realized that the glow was coming from below the ground. He came upon a ledge and looked down. There was another room below him, and in the center of that room sat a large tree. Even as he watched the tree as it pulsed, several spots on the tree bulged, and then that bulge shifted into a humanoid shape. Naruto felt a sense of unease well up inside of him when the human-shaped bulge suddenly became a person. No, not a person. It became a white Zetsu. "I see," Kyuubi said. "This is how they are manufacturing those clones. They're using the power of the Byakugan to fuel the production. That tree has the same chakra as Hashirama, too. I can only guess that they are using Hashirama's Makuten ability and the Byakugan's power to create life. Then we should destroy it," Naruto decided. So long as that remains, Madara will have an inexhaustible army at his disposal. Indeed. He would need to use something big to destroy this tree. A simple Adama Rasengan wouldn't work, and his storm-release ninjutsu was too powerful, unless he was willing to bring this entire mountain down around his ears. That meant either Sage Mode or the new Chakra Mode he had gained from Kyuubi. Of the two, Sage Mode was probably safer. There was no telling what might happen if he used Kurama's chakra on that thing. Before he could begin gathering nature chakra, a voice spoke up behind him. "Katen, Bakufu Rambu." Naruto barely had time to turn around before a massive blaze of fire in the shape of a spiral slammed into him. He only had a moment to react. His first response was to use Hiraishin, but when he tried to activate his kunai, he found that he couldn't feel them. There should have been hundreds all around Mountain's graveyard. Why couldn't he feel them? As the spiral of fire burned his body, Naruto was left with no option except to activate Chakra Mode, and then create several clawed hands that acted as a shield. The blaze washed over him. Even protected, its heat still seared his skin. His body broke out into a sweat. It felt like blisters were breaking out across his skin. The firestorm soon died. Naruto's body quickly rejuvenated thanks to his regeneration. He didn't release the chakra shroud, but he did unwrap himself from the claws. Madara was standing across from him, his face still covered by that spiral mask, body still draped in a black cloak with red clouds. "I see you are as highly resilient as ever," Madara said. "I was hoping that surprise attack would destroy you. You should know I'm not so easy to dispose of." Naruto unsheathed his Hiraishin kunai and twirled them around his fingers. "But this is good. I was just wondering where you were? Before I destroy this giant tree, I really should see to defeating you." Madara's feet shuffled along the ground. He raised his hands, adopting a combat stance. "If you think I'll be so easy to beat, then by all means, come over here and try it." Naruto started off the battle by tossing one of his tri-pronged kunai at Madara, while at the same time pointing a finger at his foe and gathering chakra. Rantan, Sen. A large beam of white light blasted from the tip of his finger. It quickly bypassed the Hiraishin kunai. Madara leapt away from the beam, which struck a pillow behind him and detonated. Meanwhile, the kunai had finally reached him. Naruto tried to activate the kunai and Hiraishin right in front of Madara. He couldn't. "What's going on? Are you having problems, Naruto?" asked Madara. "Something is wrong. Hiraishin isn't working." "Of course not," Naruto said. "You should know by now that I never have problems." "Oh?" Madara tilted his head, then shrugged. "Then I guess you're not wondering about why the Hiraishin isn't working?" Those words caused Naruto to narrow his eyes. So, the reason he couldn't use Hiraishin had to do with something this man had done. Naruto couldn't think of a way to block, negate, or otherwise cancel out his ability to teleport between kunai, but that was merely because no one had tried to. There could have been a manner of making it impossible to use Hiraishin via seal that disrupted the shiki on the kunai, or perhaps destroyed the flow of chakra between him and the kunai. Regardless of how, what this meant was he wouldn't be able to use Hiraishin during this fight. That was fine. He had other methods of combat. Raiten, Byakurai. A lance of lightning blasted from Naruto's finger. Madara dodged it, of course, but Naruto predicted how he would move and went through a series of hand seals. Fuuten, Mugen Daitapa. Naruto expelled a large gust of wind from his mouth, which blasted across the ground and caused several pillars to crumble. It never reached Madara. Before it got even halfway, a large black hole opened up in front of him. The jutsu was sucked inside. Madara went through his own hand seals. Katen, Hosenka no Jutsu. Several fireballs spewed from Madara's mouth, but Naruto summoned a wall of water to block the attacks. As steam rose up all around them, he decided to use the chakra shroud to close the distance quickly and finish Madara off. Shinra Tensei. What? Naruto was not prepared for the powerful force that slammed into him. He was blasted off his feet, crashed back first into a pillar. Pain exploded in his back. Due to the force, bile rose up in his throat, which he coughed out, along with several globs of blood. Kneeling on the ground, Naruto glared up at Madara as the masked man lorded over him. "I see what's going on now," Naruto mumbled. "I knew when I saw that Karen had the Sharingan and Rinnegan that you were somehow responsible for it. I should have known you would implant a Rinnegan into yourself." "You really should have," Madara agreed. "That you didn't only proves how stupid you are. Says the man who lost to me last time we fought," Naruto retorted. "Our battle will be different this time," Madara said. "You no longer have the advantage now that I have both the Sharingan and the Rinnegan." Naruto activated his chakra shroud. Kurama's chakra flooded through his body, flowing into him and enhancing both his chakra and physical strength. He stood up and wiped the blood from his mouth. "Just because you have a shiny Nua doesn't mean you'll be able to defeat me," Naruto said. "The last time we fought, I couldn't use the Kyuubi's chakra like I can now. You aren't the only one who has a new power." Madara snorted. "Then I suppose we'll see whose power is stronger." Naruto felt like he was in an old-fashioned standoff, except without the giant-ass summons. He and Madara glared at each other from the distance that separated them. This would be their last battle. He knew this, and he was sure his enemy also knew this. Whoever won here would bring victory to their side. No pressure. Zux. The battle had become heated, though it had also taken a turn for the worst. Konan and Yugao had done everything they could think of to defeat Nagato. No matter how many tactics they tried, nothing worked. Nagato overpowered her paper ninjutsu, avoided Yugao's kenjutsu, and fought back with Rinnegan abilities that exceeded them both. This was in spite of the fact that he was still a cripple. Shikigami no Mai. Konan turned herself into paper. One by one, sheets of paper peeled off her body, until she disappeared entirely. The paper encircled Nagato, who remained where he was, his expression calm, unruffled. Even when all of the paper slammed into him as though to bind him there, he didn't so much as squeak. Kage Bunshine no Jutsu. Yugao created 2 shadow clones, and then proceeded to launch an assault on the now bound Nagato. The clones moved in on the left and right. They closed the distance quickly. Meanwhile, Yugao leapt into the air and, raising her sword above her head, swung it down. Mikazuki no Mai. At the very last second, just before she and her clones attacked, Nagato broke out of the paper. He held out his hand and said, "Shinra Tensei." Yugao cried out as she was struck by an invisible force. She flew through the air in a parabolic arc. She would have struck the ground, but Konan quickly reappeared from within several sheets of paper and caught her. They both sat down on the ground several meters from Nagato. "Thanks, Konan." "You are welcome." "Damn." Yugao bit her lip. "Your friend is just way too powerful. There's no way the 2 of us can defeat him on our own." "I've come to the same conclusion," Konan admitted. "We might not be able to beat him. However, we can at least keep him from attacking everyone else." Konan flapped her wings and took off into the air. Down below, Yugao went through a number of hand seals as Konan launched several paper shuriken at Nagato. Katen, Hosenka no Jutsu. Yugao spat several fireballs from her mouth, which struck the paper shuriken, turning them into flaming projectiles. Nagato held up his hand. The projectiles struck a shield, the fire quickly shrank as he absorbed the chakra, and then the paper vanished as well. During the time Nagato was dealing with the jutsu, Yugao closed the distance. She swung her sword. It missed. Growling as Nagato leaned back, she attacked again and again, with each swing of her blade flowing into the next attack. The air whistled as she bit into it with her katana. However, no matter how many times she struck at him, she never hit her mark. Shinra Tensei. Yugao had expected him to use this jutsu. It was his go-to technique. She quickly replaced herself with a rock by his feet. Appearing below him, she swung her sword again. Clang. It was blocked by a forearm that had suddenly transformed into a metallic weapon of some kind. Several pods opened on the arm. Tiny needle-like objects shot from within it. Explosives. Realizing what these were, Yugao leapt back, but that didn't do anything. The explosives followed her. She tried to cut one down, but that just caused it to explode in her face. Yugao screamed as she was launched backwards. Yugao. Konan shed paper. It flew off her body and created a wall in front of Yugao. The remaining explosives struck the wall and detonated. The paper wall nearly blew up, but Konan reinforced the wall with her chakra, forcing it to remain intact. However, by focusing on protecting Yugao, Konan had left herself open. Ah! Something exploded against her back. Heat seared into her skin and burned her clothes. The wings that she had been using to fly lit on fire before turning to ash. With her wings no longer keeping her aloft, and her ability to concentrate shot, Konan fell to the ground. Her world became white with pain. When she finally came to, she had trouble figuring out where she was. Her vision was blurry, her mind was jumbled from pain, and her body was screaming at her. It took a while, but she eventually realized that she was in a small crater. Yugao was standing next to her. The woman held her blade up as though to protect her. High above them both, floating in the sky, Nagato looked down with his hands pointed at them. Konan knew how Nagato operated. He liked creating big craters using Shinra Tensei to display his power. If he did what he always did, then Nagato was going to crush her and Yugao using that jutsu. It looked like this was the end. There was nothing either of them could do. They'd done all they could, fought as hard as they could, but this was all their power had amounted to. Nagato, even crippled, was an immensely powerful ninja. With the impure resurrection granting him unlimited chakra and invulnerability, there really was no chance for them to win. "Hey! Never thought my end would come like this," Yugao muttered. "I'm sorry," Konan said. "Why are you sorry? You didn't ask for this." Yugao turned her head to smile at her. "I don't mind dying beside you. My only regret is that I won't get to marry Naruto and start a family." That was indeed regretful. Konan felt the same way. She had been looking forward to settling down and creating a family. That wouldn't happen now. "Me too," she said. Still hovering above the sky, Nagato channeled so much chakra that even Konan, who had no sense or abilities to speak of, could feel the intense wellspring of energy. "Shinra," he began, "tens. Dynamic Uantri, oof." Konan and Yugao were silent as Rock Lee somehow appeared next to the floating Nagato and jump kicked him in the face. Nagato, having obviously not expected this, went soaring away like one of his missiles. He disappeared in a twinkle of light. Rock Lee landed on the ground. Yosh. That takes care of that. Are you two alright? You haven't lost your flames of youth, have you? Konan and Yugao were so stunned that they couldn't say anything. What the fuck just happened? Zux. Kakashi blocked Itachi's kick with his forearm, cushioning the blow and using the resulting strength to push his foe away. As Itachi stumbled backwards, Sakura leapt into attack. She threw several kicks and punches. However, Itachi, with his Sharingan predicting how she would move, easily avoided her attacks. After Sakura's last kick, Itachi's Sharingan spun and Sakura suddenly grew glassy-eyed and stopped moving. Genjutsu. Knowing that Sakura was perfectly capable of breaking out of a genjutsu, Kakashi attacked, leaping into the air and launching a series of swift kicks that struck against Itachi's defending arms. He landed back on the ground. Itachi tried to pin him in place with a genjutsu, but Kakashi broke it with his Sharingan. I've been meaning to ask this for a while now, Kakashi said suddenly, but this battle is way too easy. You wouldn't happen to be holding back, would you? Itachi nodded. An astute observations, Kakashi. You are correct. I am holding back. I didn't know you could do that when you've been resurrected. A lull took place in the battle. Itachi seemed to be in no rush to continue. He was even polite enough to explain how Kabuto's jutsu worked. It wouldn't have been possible with Orochimaru's old version of the Impure World Resurrection, but Kabuto has modified it. Along with bringing someone back at their full strength, this technique also lets them retain their personality. This means that we're more powerful than we would have been. However, since our personality is intact, it means that we can resist his orders to some degree. Sounds like more trouble than it's worth, Kakashi said. Sakura had broken out of the genjutsu by now and was standing at his side. Itachi shrugged. It's a trade-off. I believe Kabuto allowed us to retain our personalities so we would suffer by being forced to attack the people we loved. We're actually lucky. If he had someone with him who had Orochimaru's cursed seal, he would have been able to force us to fight at our full strength. So what now? Asked Kakashi. I imagine we'll keep fighting until Naruto comes back, Itachi admitted. I've placed a crow with Shisui's Sharingan inside. I had originally given it to him so he could help Sasuke, but I never expected Sasuke to descend so far into darkness on his own. If he comes back, it will activate and allow me to break free from Kabuto's mind control. Then we just continue to fight until that happens? More or less. Kakashi wanted to sigh. Why couldn't Naruto have waited for a little while before running off? Zux. Hachu Kaiden. Releasing chakra from every pore in his body save the bottom of his feet, Neji spun around to create a large dome of chakra. Several snakes that tried to attack him were shredded apart. He stopped spinning, revealing a line shaped like a perfect circle around him. Bravo! Bravo! Mocking claps echoed across the cavernous room. You truly are worthy of your title. Indeed, it seems I have greatly underestimated your abilities. But you know, with that kind of strength, don't you think it's unfair that you'll never become the head of the Hyuga clan? Neji felt something prickle at the edge of his mind. Why was this man bringing that up now? Why here? Was he getting desperate, or was this one of Kabuto's many ploys? What are you getting at? Asked Neji. Kabuto chuckled. Don't act so naive. You know what I'm getting at? You've worked so hard, come so far, but because your father was born a few minutes later than Hiyashi, you were branded with a seal that you cannot escape from. The Hyuga clan cursed you to live a life of servitude. Don't you think that's wrong? What's more, the Hyuga clan exemplifies everything that is wrong with Konoha. They force people to do their dirty work, and then force them to live in dishonor and disgrace. Even you are being forced to comply with Konoha and the Hyuga clan against your will. You are a caged bird, Neji, but I can set you free. Raising a single hand, Kabuto smiled at Neji as though beckoning him over. Join me, and I will break the curse that was cast on you. Neji wondered if this guy was for real. Break the curse? Did Kabuto really think that he would fall for something like this? The man's words were so funny that Neji couldn't stop himself from laughing. What is so funny? Asked Kabuto. You are, Neji said. You just spent several minutes trying to convince me to betray my family and village without knowing the truth. I haven't been caged for years. Ever since my battle with Naruto during the Chunin exams, I have been free to make my own choices. Even if I had the bird-caged seal on my forehead, I was still treated with dignity and respect. However, Your information is a little outdated. Neji reached behind his head, grabbing the knot that tied his headband to his forehead. A single tug released the knot. He pulled the headband away. Kabuto's eyes widened. Neji looked down at his headband, saw his own face reflected on the metal surface, and grinned. There was no birdcage seal on his forehead. Thanks to Naruto Namikaze, the birdcage seal is being dissolved. Neji looked back up at the stunned Kabuto. It hasn't been announced yet, but the Hyuga clan has been slowly removing the seal in order to make way for a new seal that Naruto has created, which will go on every Hyuga member regardless of whether they are from the main branch or not and cannot be used to cause pain. Sorry, Kabuto, but if you think pretty words from an ugly snake is going to sway me, then you're sadly mistaken. Kabuto's shoulders twitched several times. It was like he was barely holding back the anger and frustration Neji imagined he was feeling. So I see, Kabuto said. I guess it was a mistake to try and sway you. To be fair, it has been a long time since I was able to spy on Konoha. My information is a little out of date. I would say a lot out of date, Neji said. Fine. A lot out of date, Kabuto said. However, this doesn't change anything. You cannot beat me. I don't have to beat you, Neji told him, smiling. I just have to keep you occupied long enough for Naruto to defeat Madara. Zux. Konan knew, instinctively, that Nagato would come back after being jump-kicked in the face. She didn't expect him to return quite as fast as he had. However, she had been expecting it and therefore wasn't surprised when he arrived again. Tenten had joined them by that time. She was not as fast as Rock Lee, and so it had taken her longer to show up. She'd complained a bit, but her complaint was interrupted when Nagato tried to turn them into a pancake via Shinra Tensei. Now the four of them were gathered together. Standing opposite of them was Nagato, who looked no worse for wear after Rock Lee kicked him in the face. It seems there are a few more members, Nagato said. That's good. Is it? Asked Konan. Yes. Nodding, Nagato smiled. The more people who fight, the better your chances are for survival. You seem awfully happy for someone who's outnumbered, Tenten said. Giving her a shrug, Nagato said, I am not fighting because I want to. Kabuto's jutsu makes it so I have to do what he orders. The most I can do is resist him, but I will still fight in the end. I knew you were holding back, Konan said. If you were serious, even injured as you are, Yugao and I wouldn't have lasted 10 seconds. What I don't understand is why you're still fighting if you don't want to, Yugao said. If you can resist, then couldn't you stop altogether? Nagao shook his head negatively. No. The Impure World Resurrection is a jutsu that forces us to fight regardless of our wish. Isn't there some way to undo the jutsu? Asked Rock Lee. This jutsu seems most unyouthful. I do not know if there's a method of undoing this jutsu, Nagato admitted. I only know that I've been resurrected and have to follow the orders of the one who resurrected me. Nagato, Konan began, I want to apologize for everything that's happened. I believe I told you before. You have no need to apologize, Nagato said. I told you already, what happened to me is the result of losing my way. I wanted to change the world. I wanted to bring peace to the elemental nations, but I became so caught up in achieving that dream through any means that I ended up letting myself get used by Madara. It was only after he killed me that I realized how meaningless my life has been. I was born with all this power, but I couldn't do anything with it. That's not true, Konan shouted. It's because of you that I'm here. If you had never existed, if you hadn't rescued me, I would have been dead a long time ago. You saved me. And in the end, I also pushed you away, Nagato said with a shake of his head. So what? Said Konan. You think that matters? You think it changes what you accomplished? It's thanks to you that I am still here, and it's because I am still here that I can continue to carry your dream. Konan. Let me be the one to accomplish the dream we both shared, Konan said, placing a hand against her chest. I'll bring peace to Amigacore. I'll bring peace to the elemental nations. Believe in me, Nagato. The clearing was silent. Konan stared at Nagato as though trying to will him into believing her through eye contact. Slowly, as though his face were made of melting clay, Nagato smiled. It was small. Most people would have missed it. Konan was not most people. Yes. I'll leave it to you then, he said, and as he said this, his body was engulfed in a white light. What's going on? Asked Konan. Nagato looked at his hands, chuckled, and then looked at Konan. It seems the jutsu has somehow been released. If I had to guess, I would say that talking to you has given me some form of closure. "Thank you, Konan. I hope you live a long and happy life." As he spoke, Nagato's skin started peeling off, revealing that there was nothing underneath. It was as if he wasn't really there at all. Layer by layer, his body broke down until there was nothing left. Nagato disappeared. Tears stung Konan's eyes, but she didn't allow them to fall. She sucked them in and stared at the spot where her friend had disappeared. "I will, Nagato. For you, and for me." Everyone remained silent for a moment, paying their respects to Konan, who continued to stare at the spot Nagato had vanished. After a while, Yugao placed a hand on her shoulder. "Come on," she said. "Let's go help the others." "Right," Konan muttered. She took one last look at where Nagato had been standing, and then she and the others left. A breeze blew through the now empty clearing. Zux. Naruto and Madara had yet to land so much as a single blow on the other person. Jutsu were launched and countered. Lightning and storms and fire filled the air. Space warped and explosions rocked the room, causing cracks to appear on the floor and ceiling. Shinra Tensei. Another variable was that Madara was now capable of using Rinnegan-related jutsu. Naruto could only assume that he had stolen the Rinnegan from Nagato after Naruto had defeated him. This posed a problem. The last time they had fought, it had also been like this, dead even. However, Naruto couldn't use Hiraishin, and Madara had the Rinnegan. Moving quickly across the cavernous space, Naruto used the pillars as cover, wincing as several pillars collapsed after being struck by the Shinra Tensei. Dust clogged the area around him. It gave him something of a smoke screen, though he didn't know how useful that was since Madara had both a Sharingan and a Rinnegan. Raiten, Byakurai. Pointing his finger at where Madara had been last, Naruto sent a beam of lightning at him. He waited for 1 second, then 2. An explosion went up. It shook the earth. Naruto activated his chakra cloak, created 2 shadow clones, and then rushed out alongside one of the clones. The other went elsewhere. He and his clone rushed at Madara. They didn't use any fancy tactics. It was a straight-up frontal assault. Several large claws extended from his back and shot at Madara, who activated Kamui to create a black hole that sucked up the claws before they could reach him. Naruto flinched as he felt some of Kurama's chakra get sucked into the Kamui, but he retracted his claws and leapt back. The clone was already in position anyway. Futon, Rasen Shuriken. A loud, shrill whistle echoed all around them. The Naruto clone, who was above Obito and falling from the ceiling, extended the 9 claws jutting from his back. Each clawed hand held a Rasen Shuriken, a miniature one. The combined screech of each one created a threnody of clashing noise that was like dozens of steel swords grinding against a rock. Madara looked up. A vortex suddenly appeared above him. The clones wasn't able to stop himself from falling into the vortex, which quickly consumed him. Naruto felt the clone dispel and blinked. What was that? What were those coffins? It had only been for a second, but he could have sworn clone Naruto had seen something before his clone had died, a space filled with coffins. He didn't let himself stay distracted for long. Madara had released massive fire dragon at him, and so Naruto did what any sane man would do. He took evasive action. Thanks to Kurama's chakra shroud, even if he couldn't use Hiraishin, he was still several magnitudes faster than Madara. He sped across the room in less time than it took to blink. When he was behind Madara, he went through several hand seals and prepared one of his more powerful jutsu. It would be dangerous. However, he had decided that he'd rather bring this entire mountain down around them than let this man live. Ranten, Hakarashi. Naruto's chakra surged before a massive storm of energy was unleashed. Fierce winds slammed against the pillars. Many crumbled. The ceiling cracked and several cave-ins happened. Lightning burst from Naruto's body following the wind, lashing out at everything in destructive arcs before, like an ancient army come to conquer. Several giant lances shot at Madara. They traveled forward, piercing everything in their path. Madara remained still. What the hell? Isn't he going to try and DOD? Naruto froze when a large coffin appeared in front of Madara. The coffin door slid down to reveal that someone was inside. They weren't wearing a cloak, which allowed him to catch a glimpse of dark skin before the lightning descended. Naruto closed his eyes briefly as the lightning jutsu nearly burned his retina. He waited for 1 second, 2, and then opened his eyes. He wasn't sure what he expected to see, though he had been hoping to be greeted to the sight of Madara lying on the floor. That wasn't what he saw. Instead of his opponent defeated, Naruto witnessed his jutsu being negated by someone he was quite familiar with. Thick, dark-skinned arms were stretched out before a muscular body. Shades glinted in the light and 7 swords were strapped to various parts of his body. Naruto knew this person. It was Kirabai. He wasn't alone. Has Madara resurrected Kirabai and the other Jinchuriki to battle me? There were 4 other coffins standing alongside the one that Madara first summoned. Each coffin was open, and each one had a person walking out from it. One of those people was a large man wearing armor. Another wore a kimono and had pale skin. Then there was an old man wearing tacky robes and mesh last. Was a young man who looked like a little boy. Naruto recognized him. It was the 3rd Mizukage, Yagura. All 4 of them had a Rinnegan in their left eye and a Sharingan in their right. I see you've turned the previous Jinchuriki into your paths, Naruto said with a wrinkled nose. I am quite particular about my paths, Madara said, shrugging. Not just any ninja would do. I needed people who were strong, ninja who could fight on par with you. Well, you certainly have chosen some troublesome opponents for me, Naruto admitted. Naruto. I know. With that Rinnegan, their vision is probably linked together the same way Pain's was. On top of that, they have the Sharingan, which means they'll be able to track my movements. We could be in trouble. Since you've proven to be such a troublesome opponent, I can no longer afford to take you lightly, Madara continued. I'll defeat you here and now. You'll try, Naruto said. Naruto exploded into action, rushing backwards with several long leaps. The 5 Jinchuriki, tails extending from their body, rushed after him. Killer Bee was in the lead. The 4 who'd appeared after him trailed slightly behind him, their positions such that their fields of vision overlapped. Ranton, Rasen Shuriken. Combining Storm Release with his Rasengan, Naruto created a massive sphere of destructive white chakra. It wasn't really shaped like a shuriken, but he couldn't think of anything else to name it, so Rasen Shuriken it was. Without waiting for an invitation, Naruto used one of the clawed hands to slam the Rasen Shuriken into Killer Bee. It missed. Naturally. However, he wasn't Naruto's true aim. Madara glared as Naruto changed the direction of his attack from Killer Bee to him. If he weren't so busy concentrating, Naruto would have grinned. Madara leapt out of the way of Naruto's attack. The Mizukage and the 6-tailed Jinchuriki moved in and cut his chakra claw. The Rasen Shuriken dissipated before it could cause any damage. That was okay. Ranton, maybe Kisuru no Jutsu. Killer Bee and the old man attempted to attack him up close, but Naruto had no intention of letting them do that. He sped through a series of hand seals. His chakra exploded. Arcs of lightning shot from his body. A fierce wind slammed into Killer Bee and the old man, swirling around them and turning into a pair of cyclones. As though sensing that they were captured, the lightning sought out the swirling cyclones. At the same time, Naruto spat several streams of water. Lightning, wind, and water combined to create an incredibly destructive attack. The 2 cyclones lit up as they destroyed everything in their path. The ceiling finally gave way, caving in and raining destruction on everyone. Naruto extended the chakra claws and used them to destroy the large chunks of debris that rained on his head. He glanced at Madara to see what his enemy was doing. That turned out to be a mistake. Several large globs of lava shot from within one of the cyclones. Naruto yelped when one hit him, searing his skin. He leapt back, but then the Mizukage and the 6 tails rushed at him. One had already created a blade of water, and the other was covered in a strange slime-like substance. The 2 attacked simultaneously. Naruto backpedaled across the cavern, and was broadsided when something hot slammed into his side. Screaming as he crashed through a pillar, Naruto was barely able to recover in time to see who had attacked him. It was the man in armor. Steam billowed from his fist. He must have been the Gobi, the 5-tailed dolphin horse. By combining water and fire, the Gobi's Jinchuriki could use boil release, which was essentially steam. This isn't good. You're just now realizing that? Be quiet. Naruto leapt away from the place where he'd been standing when his danger senses went haywire. The pillar he'd been in front of exploded seconds later. Heat blasted Naruto in the face, causing sweat to break out on his skin as steam billowed from the attack. Naruto didn't even have time to counter before the Mizukage and the 6 tails were on him. There's way too many enemies for me to defeat at the same time. We should have expected the previous Jinchuriki to be resurrected. Now we're caught in that man's trap. Fortunately, there's one good thing to have come from all this. What's that? We now have indisputable proof that you're an idiot. Naruto ducked underneath a blade of water, only to run face first into several bubbles. He scrambled backwards, but he wasn't fast enough. One of the bubbles touched him. The resulting explosion threw him backwards, skidding and rolling across the ground. His back screamed, His shoulder cracked, and his face stung as he tumbled like a ragdoll across the floor. This is so not good. In a one-on-one battle, Naruto was guaranteed victory. He was even sure that he could fight these other Jinchuriki 2-on-1. However, battling 5-on-1 simply wasn't possible. Maybe he could win if he could use Hiraishin, but the man calling himself Madara had been prepared and sealed off his connection to his kunai. The question is, how is he doing it? The only way to seal off a technique was to use a sealing jutsu, but there shouldn't have been any way for this man, or anyone, to seal off the Hiraishin. If it was that simple, it would have been done long ago. Was he using a space-time jutsu to disrupt his ability to travel between kunai? What is this? A voice asked from above him. Weren't you saying something about defeating me? What are you doing lying on the ground? Naruto glared at the one who called himself Madara and, snarling, sent a chakra claw at him. It phased through the man. Of course. That blasted Sharingan jutsu of his made it hard for Naruto to attack. TSK. TSK. You should know by now that attacks like that don't work unless you've got the right timing. Madara waved a finger at Naruto as though chiding him. Did our previous battle teach you nothing, or have you grown so desperate that you'll attack even though you know it's futile? Well, not that it matters to me. He raised his left hand. The moment I touch you with this hand, it'll all be over. As Madara slowly drew his hand closer to him, Naruto tried to think of a way out of this. There had to be something he could do to escape from this predicament. He couldn't use Hiraishin, but he still had plenty of chakra. The issue came from the man above him. That phasing ability was annoying, and Naruto didn't have a definite counter to it. Perhaps he could use a seal. That's it. The hand was coming closer, seemingly in slow motion, but Naruto didn't focus on the hand right now. He channeled chakra to his left index finger. The finger glowed. Slowly, so as not to attract attention, Naruto began writing a seal beneath his body, hidden away where Madara couldn't see it. His finger speed was quicker than Madara. He finished his seal and activated it seconds before Madara touched his head. Eh? Nothing happened. What is this? Madara touched his head again. Nothing happened. Grinning, Naruto kicked Madara in the face. Unlike the last time when his attack went through the man, this time, the one calling himself Madara received the shock of his life. Naruto's foot slammed into his face with the force of an angry god. The loud bang of flesh meeting flesh sounded abnormally loud in the cavernous interior. Madara was lifted off his feet and flew toward the ceiling, where he slammed headfirst into the hard sediment. Chipped rock fell on Naruto's head as he clambered to his feet. He wobbled, his legs feeling precarious as though teetering on the edge of exhaustion. Shaking his head, Naruto looked up. You used a seal to block my space-time ninjutsu, Madara said. He was already healed, standing on the ceiling, his arms crossed as though nothing had happened. That's very impressive. I expected no less from Minato Namikaze's son. You truly live up to your name. On the ground below, the resurrected Jinchuriki gathered around Naruto, clearly waiting for Madara to give the order to attack. He would have sighed, but he was little too busy just then. This situation was not enviable by any means. Being complimented by you doesn't make me happy, Naruto snapped. You know, for a man who calls himself Madara Uchiha, you seem perfectly capable of augmenting the powers you're lacking. I've heard about Madara from Kurama, and he told me that Madara is a conceited prick who'd never use anyone's power but his own. You aren't Madara, which begs the question, who the fuck are you? Madara spread his arms. Who I am doesn't matter. What matters is that I am going to take the Kyuubi from you, and then I am going to find the Ichibi, Nibi, and Nanabi and take them as well. Then I'll be able to complete my plans. As if we'd let you do that, a voice said seconds before 1,000 sheets of paper wrapped around the Six Tails Jinchuriki. They were paper bombs. Naruto barely had a second to run like hell before they detonated with enough force that the entire mountain shook. Konoha Senpu. Rock Lee, his skin red and veins bulging all over his body, rushed into the room and kicked the Gobi Jinchuriki in the face. His kick was so powerful that the Jinchuriki's head exploded. Literally. The entire head suddenly turned into ash and the body fell to the ground. Of course, the head regenerated a second later, but it was still impressive. Sagu, Densai. A scroll suddenly appeared. It flew through the air. Less than a second later, there was a burst of smoke and several dozen weapons shot out at the Mizukage, who leapt backwards. The man didn't even seem to realize that he'd leapt right toward his foe. Tenten, wielding a pair of scimitars, attacked him with a series of lightning-swift slashes. They were dodged, but she kept up the pressure. Mikazuki no Mai. 3 Yugaos rushed through the pillars, one leaping into the air, while the other 2 attacked the Bijin Shuriki with a pincer maneuver. One was destroyed by globs of lava, but the other successfully reached him. The clone and Yugao simultaneously hit him with an attack that cut him all the way through. He still recovered, being an undead and all, but Yugao attacked him again, keeping him on the defensive. The remaining 2 resurrected Jinchuriki tried to attack Naruto. Killer Bee sprouted several octopus tails and attempted to hit Naruto with them, while the man wearing red armor sent several compressed bursts of steam at him. A wall of paper blocked both attacks, appearing before Naruto as a multi-layered shield. Konan coalesced before him, her body forming from multiple sheets of paper, though it was only half a body. "Go after Madara," she said. "Myself and the others will deal with these 5. Naruto nodded. "I understand. Thank you." After leaping onto a pillar, Naruto ran up it, defying gravity. His chakra shroud, which had been deactivated thanks to Madara, reactivated with a burst of golden luminescence. He threw himself at Madara, who reacted with admirable swiftness. "Shinra Tensei. That won't work on me," Naruto shouted as he made a clone and had it throw him out of the jutsu's path. The clone vanished, destroyed, but it had served its purpose. 3 chakra claws sprouted from his back. A different Rasengan formed on each one: Fuuten Rasen Shuriken, Ranten Rasen Shuriken, Hyoton Rasen Shuriken. The first one to reach Madara was the Hyoton one. Madara leapt away as the Rasen Shuriken struck the ceiling, freezing it over. While he was in mid-air, the Fuuten Rasen Shuriken attacked him, but he phased through it. He also phased through the Ranten Rasen Shuriken. He didn't see the chakra claws returning from behind him. NNNGG, Ga. Naruto grinned as Madara, or whoever he was, became engulfed in a massive sphere of destruction. It wasn't until the sphere quickly expanded that he realized he may have a problem. Everything within the area was getting destroyed. The fierce, howling winds rent the air and caused the ground, ceiling, and pillars to break apart. This wouldn't have been so bad, but everything was also getting sucked into a vortex that swirled around the sphere, which was growing larger by the second. His team, who'd still been fighting with the reanimated Jinchuriki, also became a part of this vortex. Well, fuck. Reacting with haste, Naruto launched all 9 chakra claws. 4 latched onto his teammates. The other 5 dug into the ground and pulled him down. This was harder than it looked. The ground kept getting ripped out and fed into the vortex. Naruto used his 5 claws to continuously pull himself further away from the sphere and destructive winds. Thanks to the power of his 2 jutsu, the walls of the mountain were destroyed. Naruto rushed outside with the others still caught in his grasp. When he was a suitable distance away, he set everyone down and turned around, watching as the mountain became engulfed in a massive dome of maelstrom energy. The chakra soon dispersed with a loud shriek. A shock wave flowed out from it, causing him and the others to raise their hands to their face. The shock wave died down. Everyone lowered their arms and looked at the mountain. Except there was no mountain. All that remained was a crater. "That was a seriously powerful jutsu," Tenten said. "Yosh!" Rock Lee shouted. "Naruto-kun's flames of youth are so powerful he can destroy mountains. I must train so that I can destroy mountains, too." "Yeah. Sure. Whatever. I had no idea you had such a destructive ninjutsu," Yugao mumbled. "If we're being honest here, neither did I." Shrugging, Naruto continued to frown at the scene. He was forgetting something, or rather, someone. "Where's Neji?" "I'm right here," a voice said behind them. Everyone turned around. Neji was walking over to them, scratches and lacerations covering his body. Despite this, he looked none the worse for wear. Being dragged behind him by a giant snake tail was. "Is that Kabuto?" asked Naruto. "Yes," Neji said. "Huh." Scratching his head, Naruto frowned. "I completely forgot about him. What's he doing here?" "He's apparently the one who resurrected all of these shinobi," Neji said. "I didn't kill him because he said his death wouldn't break the jutsu. He could have been lying, but I thought it would be better to be safe than sorry." "Good call," Naruto agreed. "Do you think Madara is dead?" asked Konan. Naruto tilted his head. "I can't see him surviving that. Don't know about those reanimated Jinchuriki, though. Maybe we should confirm whether or not he's gone?" Yugao suggested. Opening his mouth to say that was a good idea, Naruto was unprepared for the sudden pain that speared his back. It was as if someone pierced him with a spear. His world vanished as it was overridden with pain. He thought he heard someone scream, but he couldn't be sure. Everything sounded as if it was coming from across a vast distance. His last thoughts were trying to figure out what had happened. And then he was in a familiar chamber, staring down a familiar furred face. Kurama, aka the QB, looked down at him with a grin. "It looks like you got careless, brat." Naruto frowned. "What do you mean?" Flicking his tails with a lazy swish, Kurama rested his head on his hands. "I mean that fake Madara just stabbed you in the back. Honestly, how could you let yourself be surprised like that? Aren't you supposed to be the master of surprise?" "Huh. So that's what happened." Looking down at his hands, Naruto narrowed his eyes and looked back at Kurama. "Am I going to die?" "Don't be stupid." Kurama snorted. "An injury of this level isn't going to kill you. That said, you should pray that you wake up soon. Your friends are fighting in your place, but even 5-on-1, they're not match for that faker. It seems like I'm not much of a match either." Because he had nothing better to do, Naruto sat down and crossed his arms. "In terms of power and abilities, I seem to be the stronger one, but he has more experience and is a lot more canny. The biggest issue is that phasing ability of his. You should create a seal that can negate it." "Create a seal? I might be able to do that. The last one I made was only temporary. I need to make one that's more permanent. The only question is whether or not I'll be able to create it in time." "Then you had better get cracking." "Right." Sitting down, Naruto reran everything he knew about Madara's phasing ability through his head. He had to figure out a way to seal off that ability for good. His life, and the lives of his comrades, depended on it. Zux. Yugao felt helpless as Madara appeared behind Naruto and impaled him through the back. She wanted to scream, but her throat had closed up. All she could do was watch in helpless horror as Naruto, blood dribbling down his mouth, crumbled to the ground like a broken doll. "No." The scream came, not from her, but from Konan. With tears leaking from her eyes, the woman summoned mass amounts of paper and sent it hurtling at Madara. Of course, the paper merely phased through him, but Konan didn't seem to care. "Lee. Tenten," Neji shouted. "Form up on me." "Right. Yosh." While everyone was clearly shocked, they didn't let that get to them. Neji, Rock Lee, and Tenten rushed toward Madara. While Neji and Rock Lee attacked using taijutsu, Tenten played long-range support, unsealing what looked to be hundreds of kunai that she liberally hurled at their foe. Like Konan's paper, the kunai went straight through him. "Do you really think your attacks will have any effect on me?" asked Madara as Rock Lee traveled straight through him after an unsuccessful spin kick. "None of you have what it takes to." Madara's words were stopped dead in their tracks when Neji struck him with a palm thrust. Unlike Rock Lee's attack, this one actually landed, slamming into Madara's chest and sending him flying backwards. The masked shinobi skidded along the ground after being struck. Then he fell to a knee, one hand raised to massage his chest. "How?" he asked. Neji's expression could have frozen over hell. "I don't have to tell you how I managed to get past your phasing ability. Lee. Tenten. On it. Youth." The three of them attacked in tandem once more. Again, Madara phased through Tenten and Rock Lee's attacks, but he couldn't stop Neji's. As she watched from the sidelines, Yugao wondered how he was able to do that. She looked over at Konan, who was no longer fighting Madara with the others, but was kneeling on the ground next to Naruto. Seeing this jolted Yugao into action. She rushed over to the pair and knelt down next to them. "Is he okay?" she asked. "He should be," Konan said, much to Yugao's relief. "The wound in his back is already healing, so he's not in any danger. The only problem we have currently is Madara," Yugao said. Konan nodded. "If he manages to get away from those three and attacks us, I'm not sure we'll be able to protect Naruto." She ran a hand through Naruto's hair. "Madara's jutsu has one weakness. He can only make himself intangible for about 5 minutes. Neji seems to have found another weakness, which I'm guessing means he has discovered a way of disrupting Madara's space-time jutsu. He's probably using a variation of Shikoku Fun," Naruto said, opening his eyes with a groan. "Naruto." Konan and Yugao said at the same time. "Are you alright?" asked Yugao. "Yeah. I'm fine," Naruto said. "Listen, I have a way to defeat Madara, but I need your help." Zux. Neji and Rock Lee kept the pressure on Madara. Rock Lee would attack, then Neji would attack. While Rock Lee's attack generally went harmlessly through Madara, Neji's always hit, and the results were that Madara would get sent reeling. While they worked together, Tenten remained in the back, providing long-range support by hurling several kunai at Madara. The kunai didn't damage him. However, The added variable helped keep Madara from realizing how Neji was disrupting his space-time jutsu. Thanks to his Byakugan, Neji already knew that Naruto was up and ready to start fighting. He didn't know what Naruto had planned, but he could see their leader speaking with Konan and Yugao, so he knew that Naruto was planning something. Right now, his job was to distract Madara. Keep the man's attention on him until Naruto was ready. Haki Hasengeki. Konoha Senpu. Neji thrust his palm at Madara. A powerful wave of chakra emitted from the palm. Concealed within the chakra, hidden so well even a Sharingan would miss it, was a small seal that disrupted Madara's technique. As Madara stumbled back, Rock Lee slammed into him with a powerful spin kick that sent the man skidding backwards. Neji smiled when Madara stared at Rock Lee in shock. Sashoryu. Leaping into the air as she unfurled a pair of scrolls, Tenten spun like an acrobat and released both of the scrolls' content, which just happened to be an entire armory. Weapons of every conceivable shape and size flew from the scrolls. A number of them had explosive tags on them. They bombarded Madara like a hailstorm, detonating all around him. Those explosions probably didn't do anything. Even so, the amount of fire and dust they kicked up acted as a suitable smokescreen for Naruto, Konan, and Yugao, who were finally making their move. Now he, Tenten, and Rock Lee needed to sit back and let those three deliver what would hopefully be the finishing blow. Zux. Naruto ran alongside Yugao while Konan flew into the air. Yugao had drawn her katana and he a pair of kunai, though they weren't the tri-pronged ones that he'd grown used to using. Since his ability to use Hiraishin in this place was sealed, bringing those out would have been pointless. Madara had already turned toward them, his glowing red Sharingan eye visible inside of his mask, along with the rings of his, or rather, Nagato's Rinnegan. Yugao reached him first. Naruto had hung back purposefully. As Yugao reached Madara, she swung her blade, which sung as it sliced the air apart. It phased through Madara, who tried to return Yugao's attack with one of his own. Naruto coated a kunai and wind chakra and threw it. Blood splashed against the ground as the kunai went straight through Madara's arm. Madara can't touch anything so long as he's intangible. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he reached Madara. So to attack, he has to become tangible again. This also means that for a short time, while he's attacking, he's vulnerable. It's a small window, though. That sort of attack won't defeat Madara. Naruto's fist phased through Madara again, and again. Madara went to attack but was intercepted by Yugao. His right hand flew off as he tried to punch Naruto's face in, only to be on the receiving end of Yugao's blade. Naruto frowned as more blood splattered against the ground. He's not even reacting to having his limbs cut off. It's like he's impervious to pain. He and Yugao continued to fight, with one attacking and the other waiting until Madara became tangible. Unfortunately, Madara was quick to catch on to how they were operating and switched tactics. He no longer tried to attack. He fell almost entirely into defense, relying heavily on his phasing ability to avoid damage. A stalemate. Naruto and Yugao couldn't hurt him thanks to his intangibility, but he couldn't attack them for that same reason. What's more, he seemed to have learned from their previous fight. He never used his intangibility for 5 minutes. When he was about to reach that limit, he shut the ability off and used the Mogura Tataki no Jutsu to hide underground and appear somewhere else. His cunning combination kept Naruto and Yugao from landing a solid hit. It was definitely a good thing that they were only a distraction. High above them, Konan ran through a gauntlet of hand seals. The jutsu that Naruto had showed her was one that could be used by anyone, but thanks to her paper jutsu, it worked best with her. The only issue would be keeping the enemy still. Fortunately, Naruto had already created several clones who were working on a jutsu that would keep Madara from moving. The only thing left to do was maneuver his tricky foe to that location. Naruto and Yugao kept up the pressure. They forced Madara to move to a place of their choosing by using Sage Mode to sense him and predict where he would move. When he finally reached the spot, a small circle exactly 6 meters wide, the 12 shadow clones finished their preparations and slammed their hands onto the seal they had created. "What is this?" demanded Madara as he found himself trapped by a dome of chakra. "This is your end," Naruto said seconds before a large swarm of paper covered in seals descended. Madara tried to phase through the paper as it smacked into him, but the seals activated and kept him from doing so. He shouted as his body became covered in seals. Inch by inch, his body disappeared as thousands of paper sheets wrapped around his body. In as little as 5 seconds, Madara Uchiha, or the person who called himself that, became completely immobilized. Fuuten, Rasengan. Slamming a Rasengan into the now incapable Madara's chest, Naruto had the distinct satisfaction of returning the favor dealt to him. The shinobi's entire chest was ground away, and because he was immobilized by seals, he could do nothing about it. Madara fell to the ground. Half his chest was missing. Somehow, he was still alive. Naruto stared at the hole in Madara's chest. That should have killed him. Is he immortal? What should we do? Asked Yugao as Konan descended to the ground. We'll take him with us, Naruto decided. If we can't kill him, then we can at least imprison him. Maybe the higher-ups will figure out what to do with him. Turning to face everyone, Naruto grinned. Alright, people. Let's grab Kakashi and Sakura and head off. Naruto received a chorus of "hi" from his comrades. Zux. After reuniting with Kakashi and Sakura, and subsequently breaking Itachi out of Kabuto's control via Naruto regurgitating a crow, the group proceeded to leave Mountain's graveyard with their 2 prisoners in tow. The first order of business was having Itachi force Kabuto into releasing the Impure World Resurrection technique. This resulted in Itachi also disappearing. Naruto had the feeling that Itachi didn't want to be in this world anymore anyway, since Sasuke had died. After that, Naruto had their air unit contact the allied shinobi forces and tell them that they had completed their mission. They received orders to head for the main base on the warfront. While it was called the main base because that was where Gaara was stationed, the truth was that there wasn't anything base-worthy there. It was just the place where Gaara headed up the main force. Naruto and the others were greeted by Gaara and his entourage upon arrival, though he received several looks when everyone saw the unconscious Kabuto and the papered-up Madara. Naruto, I'm glad your mission was a success, Gaara said. Naruto grinned. It turned out even better than I expected. Not only did we destroy the base making clones, but we captured both Kabuto and the one calling himself Madara Uchiha. So that's why all of the reincarnated shinobi suddenly disappeared, Gaara said. I hope you'll inform me of what happened during the debriefing. Of course. There wasn't anything for Naruto or his team to do. After the Impure World Resurrection was released, the allied shinobi nations had a much easier time defeating the White Zetsu army. Since his aid wasn't needed, Naruto and his team were left to relax in the large tent that had been built at the main base. Naruto was sitting in a chair, arms crossed. Kakashi, Neji, Tenten, and Rock Lee had disappeared. He didn't know where the latter 3 were, but he assumed Kakashi was reading porn. Konan and Yugao were sitting beside him. Do you think the war will end with this? Asked Konan. We took out their leader, so I don't see why it wouldn't, Naruto said. Will this end every war? Naruto hesitated. I don't know. What do you think will happen now that the war is almost over? Asked Yugao. Reconstruction, most likely. Naruto rubbed his jaw. A lot was lost. Entire villages have been destroyed and people were displaced. We'll need to help them. Plus the elemental nations will need to begin discussions to create policies that will stop this from happening again. Do you think anything will come of those talks? Asked Konan. Of course, Naruto replied. I plan on taking part in them. I won't rest until we've come closer to achieving true peace. There was a moment of silence. Then what should we do? Asked Yugao. Do you mean we as in the 3 of us? Asked Naruto. Yugao nodded. Naruto blinked, then frowned, and then smiled. That's easy. Konan and Yugao stared at Naruto, whose smile widened. Live, he said simply. Naruto sat behind a large desk. Sitting before him was a small computer where all of his paperwork was stored. He was currently typing up several documents detailing new construction plans for Konoha. They were being forced to expand the village due to an influx in trade with a recently discovered nation outside of the elemental nations. The new part of the village was for foreign dignitaries. Knock. 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 After looking at the door, which rattled several times as someone knocked on it, Naruto pushed his computer away, rubbed his eyes, yawned, and said, The door is open, Yugao. There was a moment's pause before the knob turned and the door opened, allowing a purple-haired woman of extraordinary beauty to enter. Yugao hadn't changed much in 15 years. The only difference was that she no longer wore her Anbu gear, which made sense as she was no longer a member of the Anbu. She was carrying a stack of papers. These are the reports from the Shinobi Academy, she said, walking in and setting the pile on his desk. I've already created copies for the filing department. Here. She placed a small USB drive on top of the paper. The documents are also in here as backups. Thank you. Naruto took the USB and inserted it into his computer. As the files began uploading, Naruto asked, How is the newest batch of ninja? Yugao paused, her head tilting before answering. They are about the same as usual. There's a 50-50 mix of kids from shinobi and non-shinobi families. It's not unexpected that the kids from shinobi families are better, but thanks to the new library that allows children from civilian families to study the basics, the kids who don't have any ninja background are keeping up well enough. Yugao paused again. Naruto waited on bated breath, watching as the woman smiled. She was doing this on purpose, telling him everything about what he didn't want to know and keeping him from knowing the one thing he did want to know. He wondered if this mischievousness came from spending so much time with Koyuki and Mei. Our daughter, of course, aced all of her entrance exams. Naruto grinned. Of course she did. She's our daughter, after all. It had been 10 years since Naruto became Hokage. Having been inaugurated at 19 years of age, he was the youngest person to ever hold the position. Several changes had taken place after his inauguration. The first was that no children under the age of 13 was allowed to enter the Ninja Academy. All children who entered spent 1 year mastering the basics and increasing their physical abilities, another year learning their chosen specialization in jutsu, genjutsu, medical jutsu, fuinjutsu, kenjutsu, etc. And another 2 years learning teamwork by taking D-rank missions and sparring with their Jonin sensei. Since there was no need for children to go out into the field anymore, all children graduated at the age of 16. Even geniuses were not allowed to graduate before that. Naruto didn't think it was appropriate or healthy to have children graduate early and experience what being a true ninja meant. The latest reports from his science department claim that children who become inert to violence too early often become unstable. Having seen the results of those reports in Sasuke, Naruto was inclined to believe them. Whose class did Kurosaka end up in? Asked Naruto. Yugito's. A soft ping alerted him to the USB finishing its upload. I'm not sure how that's going to turn out. I'm sure Yugito knows better than to show favoritism, Yugao said. She didn't show it when she had Kirai in her class. I guess. Also, I don't think I need to remind you, but the biannual Allied Nations meeting is happening later today, Yugao added. You don't need to remind me. Naruto smiled dryly. Don't worry. I'll be sure to have all the paperwork done before then. After leaning over to give him a kiss, Yugao left the office. She had her own duties to attend to as the head of the Ninja Academy. Naruto was a little disappointed. Had it not been for the biannual meeting later today, he would have probably been able to seduce her into having sex on the Hokage's desk, which happened to be one of his favorite places to have sex. Seriously. Few things were kinkier fucking on the desk where the previous Hokages did their paperwork. After he finished his paperwork, Naruto stood up, put on his haori, and left the Hokage's office. As he walked through the Hokage tower, Naruto was greeted by the ninja and office workers who passed him. He waved and smiled back. It wasn't long before he reached a circular room that was lit up with glowing seals. As he stepped into the center, the seals activated and Naruto disappeared. He reappeared in another room that looked identical. Walking out revealed that he was no longer in the Hokage tower. Several guards stood waiting for him, their uniforms featuring a long black jacket over a tan flak jacket. Their headbands bore the symbol of the Allied Nations. Lord Hokage, one of them greeted. Please allow us to escort you to the meeting room. Thank you. The meeting room was a large, circular room built within a massive tower located in the heart of the Elemental Nations. Several windows offered a beautiful view of the cityscape. A round table sat in the center of this room. There were a number of people already present. Naruto. Koyuki leapt from her seat and greeted him with her usual enthusiasm. She was wearing a mauve dress that gave her the refined air of a ruler. Her long blue hair curled at the end. The only makeup she wore was lipstick, which meant her natural beauty was visible for all to see. Konan, who stood up seconds later and with a much calmer disposition, greeted him in a less rambunctious manner. In other words, she didn't use her tongue when they kissed. It's good to see that you're actually punctual this time. Don't say that like I'm not usually punctual, Naruto said with a pout. He surreptitiously wiped the lipstick from his mouth while Koyuki quickly reapplied hers. Last time I ran late because Kirai had painted the Hokage monument. That sounds familiar for some reason, Koyuki teased. Konan smiled. Can't imagine why. Yeah. Naruto grinned as he swiped his nose. He takes after his old man. I hope that doesn't mean our world is doomed, Gaara said with a smile. He was sitting on the opposite side of the table, next to the leaders of Claw and Fang country. Not doomed, Naruto corrected. Just in trouble. How are the kids? They are doing well, Gaara said calmly. They've been asking me about when Uncle Naruto will visit them next. He frowned. I'm not sure what you did to make my children love you so much, but you're all they talk about. The mischievous smile Naruto wore was the kind he gave everyone when he had a secret. I couldn't say. I'm sure, Gaara said. Gaara looked more or less the same as he always had. He was a little older, his face a little more mature. His Kazekage robe suited him well. Outside of Mei, Konan, and Koyuki, he was Naruto's staunchest supporter. It had been thanks to their combined efforts that the allied nations had become what it was today. Naruto took his place between Konan and Koyuki. They conversed about non-work-related subjects, namely about their kids. Yahiko and Nagito were both with their nannies, since they weren't old enough to be left alone. Naruto had once offered to use shadow clones, but Konan had rebutted the decision by asking him what would happen if his clones accidentally dispelled, which was her way of saying that he was clumsy. Sasetsu was in his final year at the Ninja Academy in the Land of Spring. Like all of his kids, Naruto had taken to training their son personally when he had time. Sasetsu excelled at Hyoton-based ninjutsu and kenjutsu. He'll be taking his graduation test soon, Koyuki was saying. I'll have everyone take some time off from our duties so we can watch the graduation, Naruto said. We'll surprise him by having the whole family get together. Koyuki's grin matched his. That would be nice. Speaking of the whole family getting together, Konan began, what time should we head over for dinner tonight? Naruto crossed his arms and tilted his head as more people arrived. Mei walked in and noticed them. She waved, but since there were so many people now, she couldn't walk over and begin chatting. How about we just pick up the kids and head over right after this meeting? Can't, Koyuki said. I still have some work that I need to finish. And I need to file some papers in Amigakure, Konan added. Unfortunate, Naruto sighed. Looks like I'll be traveling alone. Soon after they finished their conversation, the meeting started. Naruto leaned back in his chair as the orator, Old Man Mifune, began the meeting by presenting the daily reports on all of the allied nations' assets and revenue. It was going to be a long meeting. Zux. Naruto arrived home later that evening. He hung up his haori on the coat hanger by the door, then did the same with his Hokage hat. Walking further inside, Naruto wondered where his family was, until he heard the sounds of combat coming from the backyard. Entering the backyard through the sliding door in the kitchen, Naruto found Yugito and Yugao watching two of their children as they spar. With her long hair unbraided and descending past her shoulders, Yugito studied their kids with a keen eye as she held Daru against her hip. Their youngest child was only 6 months old. He couldn't even speak yet. Grinning, Naruto began to stealthily sneak up behind her in a ninja-like manner. I hope you're not trying to sneak up on me, Yugito said. Naruto paused. His hands, which had been raised to block her eyes, stopped. Daru looked at him with big, cobalt eyes, as though wondering why he had stopped moving. Of course not, Naruto said at last, lowering his arms. That wasn't a very smooth save, Yugao told him. I don't know what you're talking about. Walking to stand beside Yugito, he placed a kiss on his wife's cheek and ruffled Daru's blonde hair. The little one gave him a toothless smile. Grinning in return, Naruto turned to look at his other two kids, who were locked in an intense sparring match. Kirasaka has improved a lot. Kirai is still better, though, Yugito said. He's also older and stronger, Naruto said. Kirasaka has flexibility on her side, Yugao interjected. However, we haven't started teaching her anything too complicated. Naruto spent another minute watching Kirai and Kirasaka spar. Being older and a boy, Kirai was a lot bigger than Kirasaka. He was taller than Naruto was at that age. His wives often joked that it was because he didn't eat ramen every day. By contrast, Kirasaka was about a head shorter than Naruto had been. While Kirasaka's hair was a light purple, Kirai's was pure blonde and looked like a giant ass lightning bolt sitting on his head. Cupping a hand to his mouth, Naruto called out, "All right. That's enough, you two. You should get cleaned up. The rest of the family is all coming over. You don't want to be all stinky when your brothers and sisters arrive, do you?" "Ah. Dad?" Kirasaka was the first to respond. She rushed and jumped at him, a purple-headed missile. Naruto caught her and spun so they wouldn't fall. "Were you watching us, Dad? Did you see? I'm getting stronger. You saw, right? You did." Chuckling as he rubbed her head, Naruto said, "I did see. You're getting much better. You'll only continue to improve now that you've entered the academy." "It's still not enough to beat me," Kirai said. Kirasaka responded by pulling down her eyelid and blowing him a raspberry. You two should head for the shower. Everyone's coming over for dinner soon. Right, Kirai said while Kirasaka responded with an enthusiastic, okay. The two entered the Namikaze estate, presumably heading for the bath. Naruto watched them go alongside Yugao and Yugito. Kirasaka totally gets her personality from you, Yugao said. I don't know, Naruto began. Was I that much of a chatterbox? Yes, she said. So harsh. We're also going to get cleaned up, Yugito said as she grabbed Yugao's arm and began pulling her along. Yugao and Yugito both went into the bathhouse. Since Naruto had already taken a bath at the Hokage Tower hours before the meeting, he didn't follow them. It would have ended with them getting messy again anyway. He went back into the estate and walked down to the Hiraishin room, which was a lot like the ones used by the allied nations except smaller. His original intention had been to greet Konan, Koyuki, and Mei when they arrived. However, he was too late. Mei had already arrived with their daughter. Naruto, Mei greeted. Naruto grinned as he leaned down and gave her a kiss. His lips lingered longer than was perhaps strictly necessary, which of course made their daughter wrinkle her nose. You two are disgusting, the 5-year-old Kushina said. Oh? Naruto said, raising an eyebrow. I guess that means you don't want kisses anymore, since they're so gross. Humph. Kushina blushed and turned her head. I didn't say you couldn't kiss me. I just said that you two are disgusting. You shouldn't stick your tongues in each other's mouths like that. Honestly, how shameless can you two be? Naruto grinned while Mei giggled. Kushina pouted at them both, but she stopped when Naruto pushed her red hair from her forehead and kissed her. Her face turned a shade darker than her hair when Naruto picked her up. As she buried her face in his neck, he looked at Mei. Yugito and Yugao are in the bathhouse, if you want to mess with them. The way Mei's eyes lit up was disturbing, but he didn't say anything. Thank you for letting me know. I think I'm going to go. Say hi. Just don't keep them there for too long, Naruto called after her. Mei didn't say anything. She waved a hand over her head and disappeared around a corner. Naruto sighed and glanced at his daughter's hair. Wanna go see if Kirai and Kirasaka can play with you? Okay, Kushina said in a muffled voice. As Naruto wandered up the stairs to find his other two children, he thought about the past few years of his life. Each day had been more fulfilling than the last. He didn't know if it would last forever, didn't know if peace would truly reign for an eternity, but he also knew that, should the time ever come to take up arms and fight, the younger generation would be ready for whatever came their way. Naruto Namikaze was making sure of it. That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.